Meeting of April 15th, 2022. Thank you all for being here. I really do appreciate it. And thank you for many of you who do such good work in this community. As a nonprofit director, we couldn't open the doors without volunteers in the community, and it means so much that our community does supplies the manpower and woman power for 20-some social aid agencies. That's an amazing amount of work for a community this size, and so we're all incredibly grateful. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Commissioner Rivera. Here. Commissioner Richardson. Here. And Commissioner Gosar here. Would you join and stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Public hearing, there's none. Item 4, comments from the public. Would anybody like to make a comment from the public? We'll do here in person and then we'll go online. Anybody here like to make a comment? Okay, how about online? Okay, I entertain a motion to close the public comment, please.
I move that we close that.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing that all is in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item 5, disclosures. Commissioner Barrett?
I have.
Commissioner Richardson?
I have none.
I have none either. Item 6, considerations of changes on the agenda. Jackie or Jennifer? Bailey, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. I request that we please add an item to discuss grant applications and the approval process of those.
Okay, we'll put that at 8A. How about that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other changes? Okay. Item 7, proclaim April 17th through 23rd, 2022 as National Volunteer Week. And I have a proclamation to read. Whereas National Volunteer Week is the chance to recognize the impact of volunteers and give thanks to all those who build our community through acts of service. And whereas services provided by volunteers help to tackle some of our community's greatest challenges, including issues such as health, education, and financial stability. And whereas complex problems cannot be solved without those who dedicate their time, resources, and skills to these causes. And whereas volunteer work comes in many forms, such as stocking food bank shelves, mentoring youth, advocating for a favorite cause, and securing donations. And whereas it is crucial to recognize and show appreciation for volunteers to highlight how truly valuable and special they are. And whereas highlighting local volunteers renews our sense of community and unites all who call Albany County home. And whereas volunteers in Albany County inspire service, dedication, and empathy, which motivates others to better our community. Now, therefore, I, Pete Gosar, chairperson of the Board of Albany County Commissioners, hereby proclaim the National Volunteer Week be recognized and celebrated from April 17th to 23rd, and encourage all Albany County residents to celebrate volunteerism and look for ways to make a difference. Commissioners, anything to add to that?
Just want to say thank you to all you present and to those who couldn't make it this morning. As Pete said earlier, we couldn't do what we do in this community without all of you volunteers and the agencies that you volunteer for. So thank you so much.
Entertain a motion to approve the proclamation.
I move that we approve the proclamation declaring April 17th through the 23rd as National Volunteer Week.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing that all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all. Wonderful place, and it's because of you guys. It's a wonderful place. Thank you. Item number 8, present for approval, letter of intent for the United States Department of Agriculture Rural Energy Pilot Program. Hi Bailey, good morning. We'll give it just a minute for all the good folks to. Rachel, good morning. How are you? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Sorry, we're getting a little bit of a late start, but a little AV trouble.
No problem. I get it.
Okay. Thank you, guys. All right, Bailey.
So this is the application, this is the letter of intent for the USDA for their REP program. It's a brand new program with USDA. So this is a whole different world for everybody. The way they decided to do this is they require a letter of intent. If they like your letter of intent, then they're going to invite you to submit an application. We did have a little bit of a short turnaround time, so thank you to Karen, our grant writer, and then Rachel. They spent a lot of hours working on this, and it wouldn't have been done without them. But I'm going to turn it over to Rachel to explain the program because she's the expert in it.
Okay, thanks, Bailey. Good morning, Rachel. The floor is yours. Go on ahead, please.
Yes, thanks so much. And I'll also just say thanks to Bailey and Brady for supporting Karen and myself in this process. I think everyone has a copy of the letter of intent, but I could certainly share my screen if people are interested in that. What would work best for everyone?
Let me make you a co-host, Rachel. I think I can do that.
You.
I can't.
That's okay. I can also just talk through it if things are, especially if we're having IT issues today. So I'll start maybe by introducing myself. My name's Rachel Bedoli. I'm an assistant professor in the Haub School of Environment and Natural Resources at the University of Wyoming. I have the pleasure of working with Commissioner Gosar. Oh, I think I'm co-host now. So let me try to do that. Let's see here. Excellent. I'll try to make this a little bit bigger. I won't walk everyone through the entirety of this long LOI. It's much larger than many letters of intent, but I have the pleasure of working with Commissioner Gosar, also folks in the city of Laramie, other students, faculty, and staff here at the University of Wyoming, and with the Alliance for Renewable Energy Community-Based Organization in Laramie. And together since about September, we've been working on a Laramie Joint Climate Action Task Force that really builds from the great work of students and the city of Laramie in declaring their carbon neutrality by 2050 resolution. And we explored this grant, which is a rural energy pilot program. Up to $2 million, we qualify in Albany County. And as the largest geographical body comprising these multiple stakeholders, Albany County proposes to invest these funds to establish a rural energy community partnership that really leverages the good work we're already doing in this task force, where over the past year, we've been trying to identify shared emissions reduction strategies and shared community energy strategies across all stakeholders. So we want to leverage those foundations and support viable community scale energy efficiency and renewable energy, which we're consistently hearing from our community that people want and need. This is a long executive summary, but it really establishes sort of a strong partnership. I began working with the city and ARE in 2018 on these issues, and I'm really proud to say that students in my courses have consistently advanced projects, including with Commissioner Gosar and Darren Parkin in the city of Laramie, Albany County's first ever greenhouse gas emissions inventory. So again, I will spare you the very long history and show you the budget, what we're proposing to do. I think one of the things we've really noticed, speaking of volunteerism, is that we have a lot of great committed people in this task force. But we really need to build capacity and start to identify personnel that can support the city, county, ARE, and university to do this work. And we really need some planning time before we start implementing these community energy strategies. So the budget looks like this, with quite a bit allocated to personnel over 3 years of the grant cycle, program supplies and support ranging from meeting materials and computers to a professional facilitator, who has been helping us pursue these strategies over the past year. Travel so that we can visit other Wyoming communities to share our good work and visit regional events to learn more about how to do it. Technical assistance to, for example, local solar energy companies to help us explore how to do this. And then one really exciting piece of this is that after doing this planning in years 1 and 2, we have asked for $1 million for implementation of these actions. So we are pursuing about $1.8 million, and this does involve a match from in-kind contributions, my time, for example, other UW staff time, city time, potentially county time as well. So that's a match of 20% of the total grant. I believe that's the bulk of it, but just to really spell out the goals here, we want to sustain the efforts of the task force. I'm really grateful that Commissioner Gosar has been participating in that to establish this long-term energy partnership. We want to conduct community education and outreach so that we create plans that the community supports and receive their feedback for both renewable energy and efficiency. We want to explore through this funding how to find long-term funding and more grants and actually use program coordinator time to apply for that. And then, as I mentioned, implement one or more data-driven strategies that emerges from the planning. The other thing, I'm very, very grateful to have built trust between the university and these various stakeholders. So to note, because we have the capacity right now to do this at the University of Wyoming, we're proposing that the personnel funds and many of the program supplies and support occur through a subcontract with the University of Wyoming, and specifically me and the Help School of Environment and Natural Resources, where I can hire a program coordinator and graduate assistants or part-time students to serve each of our partners directly, but we can remove some of the supervisory burden from the city, county, and other stakeholders, and continue to do good mentoring and guidance through the task force. I believe that's it. Bailey, Commissioner Gosar, anyone, have I missed anything?
Bailey,
I don't think so, Rachel. I think you covered it all. And again, this is just a letter of intent. So if we should know middle of May if they like our letter of intent, and will allow us to submit an application, and then that'll be due, I think, middle of July. So it'll be a lot more in depth to what Rachel went over, what our application is.
And I'll
go ahead, Rachel, please.
I was just going to build on what Bailey said, and we do have verbal support from our partners through the task force. And if we are invited to pursue a full proposal, we would pursue more formal letters of support from all stakeholders as well.
And maybe when is the decision made as far as grant?
For the grant application, I believe it was late summer, early fall. They're trying to get this program up and running fairly quickly, but it is the federal government, so there could always be setbacks. Yeah.
Any questions?
All my questions keep getting answered as people talk. So no, not. I mean, you know, we probably ought to submit the letter of intent and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, and I have to thank Rachel and Karen, who's our contracted grant writer. I think the turn was maybe 2 weeks, if not less than that. And there was a lot of information, as you can see. It's 15, 16 or 17 pages. I can't remember last night reading it. But it's a fantastic letter. Thank you guys so much. And then Bailey and Brady, thank you for herding the cats and getting us all in the same room at the same time, which is not an easy task. I think we fit the rural energy pilot program. It was a quick turn and a really in-depth letter. So I think that narrows the amount of people that can put in an application. I think a strong application with the university, the city, the county, and the nonprofits is also strengthening to us. So I'm really excited about the opportunity. And then I would like to thank all the program heads and directors and everybody who filled out those surveys for commute times. Those are part of this. We were able to say that we are doing emissions surveys here. Thank you for 75 or 80% of your folks getting right on it, getting that done. This will be part of the application going forward. So it's really been a joint effort. So thank you all. I appreciate it. So I guess I would entertain a motion to approve the letter of intent.
I move that we approve the letter of intent for the United States Department of Agriculture Rural Energy Pilot Program.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Bailey. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, commissioners.
Have a nice afternoon. And then Bailey, we have 8A, grants application and approval process.
Yes, so as you know, recently I've been requesting quite a few special meetings in regards to grant applications. This year, I don't know what has happened over at the state. They're giving me 30 days sometimes to do an application, which does not line up with commissioner meetings, of course. And I do not like requesting special meetings. I think it's a waste of everybody's time, to be perfectly honest. We have to publish it in the paper. It's a waste of money. Or I guess not a waste. I mean, these are good things, but it's more money we're spending and more time I'm taking, and I don't want to do it anymore. I've had some conversations with Jennifer. I've had some conversations with Jackie. One of the things Jennifer and I were wondering, I guess, is if you guys would be agreeable, thank you, to having me ratify applications as long as they don't have a match. So our prevention application, for instance, which I'm going to actually have to request another special meeting at your meeting on Tuesday, there's no match requirement. I actually know the amount of funding we're getting already. We have to do the paperwork to get it. But instead of requesting a special meeting, I'm hoping maybe we could just start to ratify some of these at the next following meeting. But this is your decision, and I'll do what you guys want, but I can't give up 2 weeks when writing applications when I only get 30 days of the state. I want to make sure that our applications are good moving forward. And I sat down with Jackie this month, went over every deadline I have. I think there's 20 things I have to do by the end of this month, or actually in the next 3 weeks. I have 20 things. So so I can't give up any time, and I apologize for that. But the downfall of deadlines, I guess.
You just don't have the luxury of being able to set things to the back burner that many
Correct.
days.
And if there's, I mean, we have grants that we know about every year. Our state drug court grants, we know every year we're getting prevention every year. Our few public health ones, I don't do actually the applications and stuff for those. We kind of just get those funds. But there's ones we know every year. If it's a brand new grant like this letter of intent that we've done, absolutely I want to come to you before. And I even will most likely give you guys a heads up that, hey, we might be doing this. Give me your opinion. I don't want to waste time either. But we have grants that we get every year, and I mean, everybody knows it, and it would, I think, help everybody out.
The other thing Bailey and I talked about is for the majority of the grants that Bailey applies for, we do the application and then they write back and say, you've been accepted, you have to sign this, or here's the contract you have to sign for the grant. So we're not obligated to take that money or meet a county match part of it until we do that. So even if Bailey does the application with a match on it, which when she brings you the application, they've already budgeted for it and they know where it's coming from. If there's extra, they're gonna ask you at that point and let you know. But what we talked about yesterday was in doing those applications and having you ratify them later, it doesn't bind you to anything at that point. If when Bailey brought it in front of you to ratify, this board said, oh, this is not something we want to continue because there's something going on that nobody else was aware of, then Bailey has the option to withdraw the application or refuse the funds. When we get the letter or the contract back, she can say, our circumstances have changed, we're not going to do that. So just so in your processing, just know that the ones that Bailey would be asking to ratify would come to me so I could look them over, make sure there's nothing that jumps out as a legal problem. But the funds themselves wouldn't be obligated until we actually got something to sign or for you to all to sign.
So there's always an exit.
Not on all of them, but Bailey knows which ones.
SAMHSA, for instance, you apply, they approve you, you're good to go. There's nothing to sign. Everything that is passed through the state has an agreement of some sort, and that is what we mostly apply for. I mean, I know we're looking to open things up a little bit, but like I said, any application we've never applied for, absolutely, I would ask you guys first. And anything that I know, Sam said, for instance, I know that it's just, yep, you're good and go, that would be approved before I actually submit it. It's just more of these ones that are passed through the state is what I'm looking for. Open up.
Mr. Richard?
Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So what I'm hearing, and I think we know this, but sometimes we don't always make the distinction, is that an application is an application, not necessarily a contract. So from my perspective, I don't have a problem, ratifying applications, because ultimately the MOU or the contract, comes back, and that's where we're officially engaging into a legal agreement or contract with the entity. So from my perspective, I wouldn't want to bog down the process that way, with things that are kind of perfunctory or they're going to happen, I think that's too hard on you, Brady.
We're making it work, but then I have to call the special meetings and I don't want to waste your guys' time. We're all busy and you guys all have other jobs then.
Well, and in the cycle of grants, you have times that are quiet and you do other work.
I mean, lately they're due the day before your next commissioner meeting is what I'm doing. So I was like, great, and it's just 2 weeks. I can't give up 2 weeks of writing.
But then there are some times up here where they're all coming in.
Right now.
You need to be able to pre-sort them for this commission.
I agree. I'm totally comfortable with this process, and I like the fact that you really are going to be looking for other sources as far as grants. And since those won't be familiar, you will be presenting to us ahead of time. So I'm good with what you have presented here today.
Yeah, Bailey, I am as well. If you could send those grants as you send the applications, just so I'm familiar. And send it to.
And you will still all ratify it, just
right.
Next.
Right. Just enough time to get a little heads up for me to think about it while it's in the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Bailey. Good idea. Item 9.
Why didn't we think that before?
When Bailey brought it up yesterday, I was like, I don't know why we can't. That makes sense to me.
Because she finally got tired of that process.
So many of them this year.
Okay, seeing no more business before the Albany County Commission special meeting on April 15th, 2022. I'll adjourn the meeting and then we'll open up for a work session. I suspect that most of you are coming to attend. And so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for joining us. And we will stay on for a work session. We live stream those work sessions, don't we? We just don't.
You just don't take public comment.
We don't take public comment. Okay. All right. So Christina, are you ready to start the work session?
Sure. Okay.
Does anybody need a break before we start her? Okay. Just to give you guys a little bit of background, the work session. Sometime last year, I asked Christina to look over the salaries throughout the county and do a review of all the salaries. Where we were supposed to be, are we competitive? Where are there gaps? Where are we low? Where are we high? And so this is the first conversation with regard to that. Christina has that information for us. My hope is we'll just kind of take a look, ask any questions that we have preliminarily, and then I don't want to spend too much time beating it around the shed until we get a chance to look at it. That's all right, Christina.
Sure.
And then if you guys have any questions or concerns or thoughts about where you'd like to see the salary schedule go, that would be great.
So I'd like to actually make it more of like a circle so we can all talk together as a group, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
I don't want to have my back to everybody. So if everybody kind of wants to come and we'll just kind of sit next to the commission.
Yeah, come on. I like that. That's fun.
The worst part about this, you right here.
I've already met with all of the departments. They've already seen all of their own salary information. Here's the
Yeah, they're there.
I am the outer edge.
You're too high. I know.
He has a gun, so he likes to back to the wall, you know, no one can come up behind him.
Do you want this? You can sit over here in this corner. You're like, no, I want the whole thing. Okay, listen, we always appreciate the guy with the gun being close by.
I see
Somebody
some
who
of you
knows how to
come
use
to
it.
think the company.
I know, sitting in the wrong spot.
Yeah, and this is a, come on.
All right,
Tracy,
Go ahead, Tracy. Great.
This is a.
Make Christina sit up there with you.
Isn't as special as you think.
Yes, people are always asking next.
You know what? Hey,
Oh, she don't have any.
but I can. pick
Okay.
her. It's real.
I didn't know you were-
It's like, hey, man.
Wait, over there, I can't.
I was gonna ask. Now we can do that.
Well, Christina, I'm really glad that you met with everybody or sent this along to everybody so that hopefully you guys have a little bit background so that you can have a different kind of discussion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so everybody has already seen their own salary stuff. I just finished all of the averages this morning, and so did I not give you another? Yep, I have two. There you go, Jack. Thank you. So everybody has seen them. The spreadsheet itself, Pete, is like 18 pages long, so I did not print all of that for you. I will email the final sheet to the three of you today. But everybody in this room has already seen it and has their own individual sheets for their own offices. So what you have in front of you is a couple different things. One is the agenda. I want to talk more than just salary. When I met with all the departments, we talked a lot about the benefits that the county offers, any potential changes that they would like to see. And we have some ideas we'd like to float to the commission today. But I don't want to waste everybody's time being the budget team to refigure numbers and work on policy and redraft policy if the three of you are not interested in some of our ideas. So we don't want to waste anybody's time, which is why you have that agenda in front of you. The second sheet that I handed out is potential increases for this budget cycle for each department. There's a few in there that are blank. I don't have those done yet. So that number may change slightly, but I don't see it going up a significant amount. Also, there's two things to note on this. The coroner line item, one of the things that we want to talk about with the coroner office is Jennifer has expressed a need for the coroner to be a full-time position with the county and not a part-time position. And so you'll see that note on the side there. She's not here this morning, but she's indicated the amount of work and calls and times that they have. She's having trouble meeting the needs of that department. And they also typically have two people that go out for safety reasons, for lifting and other things. And having the full-time position or the coroner be full-time would be more beneficial. So that full-time salary is not figured into her amount there. And then I was gonna say something else and I forgot. So that's the salary information. Overall, Pete, to generally answer your questions about the salary grade, we are somewhat in line with the national average. And I don't know if I can put it on the screen, if somebody, I'm not sure if the computer goes up there for you to look at, but we are within the national average for the most part in most of our position. Overall, you had asked for generally, to give the example of a 30%, being 30% within market. The problem that we had when we started to review positions is we have some positions that are at their 95th percentile. We have some positions that are at the 20th percentile. We have some positions that are at the 76th percentile. So we are all across the board. Part of the reason for that is we have a lot of long-standing employees here at the county. And we'll see that change probably within the next 5 years because all of those employees are near retirement age. But we're across the board. And so for me to bring everybody or every position to 30th or 40th percentile just doesn't make sense because we have so many that are already 50 or above. There's no way for me to equitably do that and bring everybody to the same amount. So we took a little bit different approach, which is why I met with all the departments individually. And we talked about what it looked like in their specific office, because each office is different and they do different things and the responsibilities are different. And so one of the things that I wanted to propose to you today, you had asked for a pay grade scale countywide. As we started to dig into this and we started to talk to each of the departments, we found that it's very difficult to do. Jackie's entry level positions are not the same as Tracy's, are not the same as Chelsea's, are not the same as the sheriff's, not the same as Stacy's, and they're all across the board. And what happens is we end up trying to fit these positions into categories where they don't really line up because the duties are different. And so I've asked each of the departments how they feel about having one major or one, not major, that's not what I meant to say, one full pay grade scale, or if they were interested in having pay grade scales for their each individual office. And everyone seemed to like the idea of having their own for their office. So we've initially went in that direction. If you guys decide that you want one countywide, we can do that. But what ends up happening is because all of our positions are so different, they're not just general like office manager positions, nursing positions, you know, our clerks and our treasurers and our assessors all do different things. And so it makes all the data skewed when we try to shove everybody into one pay grade scale. So when I sat down and met with each of the departments, we talked about where their positions stand and where they stand within the scale. I'm going to pick on Jackie a little bit, only because she has the longest standing staff in the building currently. She's got 6 positions that are what we would consider over market value because they've been here for 17, 22 years, 30 years, 40 years. And so her data is a little bit different than the sheriff, who's had a massive amount of turnover, and most of his employees are under 5 years. And so we kind of took a step back and decided to not look at the percentile and where the position range, but where they actually fall truly within market value. And so with that is the data that I'll send forward for you guys to review, the full salary scale, and then the individual office amounts. So what else do you want me to talk about with the salary data specifically?
Well, that's fine. I've got a few questions, but we'll get them all out of the way at some point.
Okay, you can ask them now because I don't know what else you want me to address in regards to the salary.
Okay, I know there had been a move in HR overall to group non-like positions with skill likenesses. So if, for instance, if somebody who worked only needed a high school diploma, whether they were in the office or whether they were driving for Rob, they all only needed a high school diploma. If they worked with a truck, that was a set of skills, or with a word processor, that was a set of skills. Those were kind of equivalent. There was no additional certification, no additional training. And so there has been a move because, quite honestly, gender pay has been biased because office assistants have not been paid like people who work outside on a building, even though they were different jobs, but they're very similar as far as education, skill level, training, and all the things that go along with that. So that was kind of my hope that we would think about that. I know that might be a big and a different approach to this, but that's all right. That doesn't, just because it's my hope doesn't mean it has to be done. I was just kind of interested to see, I really don't want to disparage people because of gender and because of historical way we've always done it, right? We've always done it this way, so we're just going to continue doing it this way while we continue to have women in Wyoming make 70% of what men make for the same position. And so I want to be done with that here if we can do that. And if there's a way to do that, I would love that to be done.
Sure. And I think, so when I did the salary survey, that we didn't look at genders or anything like that. We truly looked at the positions itself. Now, I disagree a little bit in the regard that even if a general office assistant position entry is high school and a groundskeeper is a high school, that those are the same, because they aren't the same. Your outside person isn't doing computer work, Microsoft Excel, responding to emails, you know, those types of things. I was gonna say keyboarding, that's back from the 90s.
Yay.
Typing, thank you. Yeah, and so there is a little bit different level of skill. The same goes with Rob's guys, even though that office assistant and a driver can be high school, what they have to know to work equipment and the certifications that they have to get are going to be different than somebody who's a groundskeeper. So I took the approach of, we didn't look at whether they were male or female. We looked at the position as a whole. We looked at our job description and what the qualifications were or are, and what that salary survey matches. So if it requires a bachelor's and 3 years of office experience, we tried to find the equivalent when we did our salary survey, which is why we ended up making salary grades for each office, because the skills are different. And even though maybe the entry level requirements are the same, the additional skills that are needed weigh on what somebody gets paid. And so I'm not too concerned about any gender bias when you look at the salary survey, whether it's male or female. We tried to take a more direct approach, looking at the actual skills for each of the positions, what is required, what certifications are required, what degrees are required, and then based our salaries on those. So I think we did a pretty good job of kind of eliminating some of what you're talking about, but probably not fully, because I didn't classify positions the same just because the entry level was the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and we had gotten some feedback at the commission that, entry levels are pretty low and pretty maybe not competitive, and maybe have been there for quite some time. So inflation now has made that 30,000 a year that was 1992, probably about 18, right? And we have to figure out how to do that.
And so you'll see that in those numbers. So Jackie's office, for example, hers is one of the higher. Because she's a larger office than some of our others, but all of her entry level positions started at 30,000. When we salary surveyed them now and we looked at current market trends, they're averaging about 40,000. And so she's got, I think, 4 or 5 positions that I'm recommending bringing up 10,000 a piece, just to get them up to that 40,000 range, which is why you see her number higher. Yes, so there were lots of positions that were pretty minimally paid. Entry level clerks, entry level treasurers, entry level assessors, thank you. Who else? The sheriff's
Mid-level.
His cooks were a little low, because you can go to Wendy's and start at $15 an hour. And so I recommended increasing his cooks a little bit. Who else? Let's see.
Sure.
I think are those on my entry level. So pretty much across the board, all of the entry levels came up some degree. Did you have a question?
Super, yeah. Sure, super.
Yeah, it's in my brain is just going, because first of all, if you're going to examine gender disparity, it would have to be done in the same position, not necessarily based on education or training. Like you could clearly demonstrate gender disparity if the men in Stacy's office make more than the women for doing the same job, or, but like to compare somebody who works inside a heated and air conditioning building and has a reserved parking space, to say a motor grader operator, they're running a $300,000 or $400,000 piece of equipment, and the skills to run a motor grader efficiently, it's like art. It's not something that you can type fast or learn, it's just, if we stretch the comparison too far, then it's not a comparison anymore. And if somebody goes out and tears up 12 miles of road and makes it worse than, the value of what they're returning and what they're working on, it's from my perspective, I understand that women do make 70% statistically on the average, but the details matter, right? It matters. I mean, like in my business, I have women and men doing the same work, and the women are paid the same as the men. Well, actually more, because she's worked for me longer, right? But if I had an office person and I was comparing her to my people who work out in the mud and dirt and blizzards and closed roads and all that, you know, there's a different level of danger and challenge. It's not necessarily the same, and responsibility and return, right? So if we have any disparities in internally, like same position pays a woman less than a man, who, you know, like that would bother me a great deal. But to compare dissimilar positions, I don't think it's that useful. It seems to me that what you know, this work that you've done, Christina, is it makes sense to me. And then I'm trying to understand how it would fit into what is our step and grade. You know, we have sort of a numerical grade of jobs. And to me, if we were to accept or apply this to it, some entry level positions would start at a 27 and some would start at a 25. You know, in other words, we wouldn't use the step and grade to make this conform. This would just fit in to the step. And does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's why we split it into individual offices so that it's unique and fits the roles and responsibilities for each office. And so everyone, I think.
So it means that not all clerical positions would start in the same job classification in the step and grade. Some might be, they might be within a range of 5 in those numbers, right? But they wouldn't be like you're starting here, period, end of story.
Right, exactly. So the clerk's positions, entry level, are different than Tracy's, they're different than Chelsea's. And so those are all different and unique as far as the skills that they do. They have some similarities, but they have differences as well. So that's why they're all classified within their own department. Now, positions like our office managers, our assistant office managers, we have a couple admin assistants, we have like our cooks, all of those are similar across the board, because they all market survey the same. The fees are
Sure.
similar enough that they're the same. But we have broke down into the individual offices, so that Jackie has a pay grade range for her office, Tracy has one for her office, the sheriff, Chelsea, and so on. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, that answers my question. And then one more. I was thinking about the conversation about cooks. Do they get benefits in retirement, like as full-time positions?
They do.
So I have a friend who's in charge of the training table at UW. He runs it. And the jobs that have health insurance and retirement and that don't require rotating or wacky schedules, like it's a set schedule in food service, are very rare and very sought after, because you know you're going to work 5 days a week or whatever at time X and you're done at time Y. You don't, you know, open for 3 days and close for 4 days, and you know, and the benefits make those very different. So with respect to that, if you only look at what the hourly rate, but not the total compensation package and the schedule, most people in the food industry expect to almost be on call, like a, you know, they just spend endless hours beating their heads against the exhaust hood in there, you know, and stuff like university food service, school district food service, jail food service, it has a lot more knowns and sort of fringe benefits. So that has to be considered when we look at that.
Yeah. The only thing that I think sets our jails aside from even the school district and the university is there's a department of 3 and they operate 24 hours. Well, they don't feed 24 hours a day, but 7 days a week compared to the school district, which is 5. The university, I'm not quite sure what their schedule is, but having a staff of 3, if one of his individuals call in sick, then they have to come in. There's no option. And so we're a little bit more tighter in regards to
The size of the operation
Exactly.
affects that.
Exactly. And so we want to compensate those individuals, which is why I recommended the increase, because it is a little bit different than the school district. If they have a team of 20 and somebody calls in sick, well, then you might be one of 8 that get called. Here, you only have 2 options.
Mhm.
And so when you look at those and how often they potentially could be called in, or if there's an accident or anything like that, he's got to be able to cover that to feed those people, because it is required that they feed. So,
Well, and then it's interesting that the starting, that we're low starting. And I think that the workforce used to be more patient than it is now. So if you start low, basically you might see the opportunity to advance. Like if within an office, the starting pay is lower than market, but ultimately some people in that office are getting paid higher than market. That means you could get a job there and sort of make that sacrifice on the front end, with some implied promise of the opposite on the back end. But I don't think that the current workforce in America has that level of patience. People don't work somewhere and get a gold watch. They change jobs every 5 years, and
so it's interesting.
So probably if we want to attract, my point is probably if we want to attract the kind of people we want to attract, we probably have to pay more. And we probably won't have the longevity. Like we may not have to do anything about the fact that people who've been here a long time make maybe higher than market, because as they retire, we probably won't run into that very often going forward, just because of the dynamics of the workforce.
You got it.
Somebody's going to want to work here for 8 years and we're going to go do something else. And so we probably have to start higher, and maybe it's not even that much of a concern.
Well, are
That
you department
longevity.
heads, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go
Are you
ahead.
department heads of finding that you're having employees at the entry level coming in and only sticking around maybe 3-4 years, and they're not looking at this being career positions as previously in Jackie's office has a lot of those were career people? Is that the trend right now that you're seeing?
I would say in my office, 3 to 4 years, that's a like. Not
That's
even, yeah, that's not
Okay.
existent for the front counter, because they have so much, month end, we have lines and lines, and it's never ending, and they take so much verbal abuse on various degrees on any given day, that 3 years, that would be great if they would stick around that long.
Do you think they would if they?
If they got paid better,
Yeah.
I think it'd help wash the salt out of the wounds, so to speak.
Make it more tolerable. I mean, you can work on working conditions. Some.
How long has
Sure, make
30,000
people-
been our entry-level wage? Does anybody know?
Well, I've been here 7 years and it's been that way since I've been here.
At least 15 in my office.
Yeah, so 30,000 and 30,000, right? It's the equivalent of probably 18, paying people 18,000 back in the day, 15 years ago. And so just to adjust for inflation, you have to move it to a number that's much different than 30,000, or you're just paying people less all the time.
Well, and
You
you
had
get,
something to say?
you get what you pay for.
Going back to, that turnover, I just have Brady, but when I hired him, I knew I'm gonna be hiring for somebody that's 3 to 5 years, because that's that generation now. And I only have an office of 2, but I do see the turnover in all the grants positions. And it's the same thing. And I think part of it too is just the generation that is coming out of college right now looking for jobs. They're not looking to stick around. They're looking to keep moving. And if they're not moving up quick enough, they're leaving.
So I handed out two turnover reports to you guys that you saw. So this one, that's the charted looking one. This is January 2021 to April of this year. Of course, we're just halfway through April. But if you look, Q1 for 2021, we had a 12% turnover rate. Q2 was 11, almost 12%. Q3 was a little over 6.5. Q4 was a little over 6.5. Q1 for 2022 was a little over 6. These percentages have almost doubled from the year previous, from the 2020 year. And so I thought that was interesting. If you look at the second report, for that same time frame, we had a 46.3% turnover rate. That's a lot. That's a significant number. And it's broke down, those little colored circles at the bottom. We can pull it however we want, but I looked at termination reason, which departments, and then their length of service. And so you can see those percentages there as well. But we're losing on average about 4 people a month is what the data is showing. And that's a significant amount of employees to have to retrain. Using the sheriff's office for an example, he's not only turning over, but what does it cost you to put somebody in uniform and send somebody to the academy?
By the time it's all done, it takes us about a year and it's about 18 grand.
Okay. And Chelsea, I think about you and the certifications that your field people have to have. What does it cost for you to get everybody certified?
Probably about 2,000 a year.
Okay. So, and I'm sure there's others, but the point being that having almost 50% turnover in about a year and a half is a significant amount of people. And so we're not only losing people due to salary, we're losing people due to benefits. When I started 7 years ago, we were stealing people from the University of Wyoming because we paid higher wages and had better benefits. In the past 6 months, we've lost 7 individuals back to the university, not because they're paying more money, but their benefits are better. They have more time off. They're allowed to work from home. Their flexibility is there. And some of their benefits are a little bit better than ours now, but essentially our wages are the same. And so we're losing people back to the university. So that's interesting that when I first got here, we were stealing them and now they're leaving us to go back to UW. And so if we don't make some sort of change, whether it's salary or benefit or both, I think we're going to continue to see those percentages go up with our employee turnover.
So Brett, I'd like to just turn it out to you guys, and if you could maybe tell us a little bit about your organization and what motivates, if it's not money, if it is money, right, that's something that can be handled. If it's not just that, what benefits and what would those benefits look like, right? Is it a 4-day work week? Is it a telehealth ability to work at home a couple days a week? Is it more vacation days, right? Is it PTO that is more beneficial? What would you think it would be? And I don't care who would like to start.
I'll start.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I did come here from the university.
Yeah.
My biggest downfall was the vacation. I did not like that it was 2 weeks, use it or lose it. And I know that we have to pay it out at the end, but I mean, when I take my vacation, I'm out of here. I'm not in town, I take it. And there are years I take more than others, depending on who wants me to go wherever. But I think too, having even just a little bit more flexibility, I have a 1-year-old. He's been sick quite a bit this year. Having that flexibility to work at home if I need to, because he can't go to daycare. I know there's other parents that actually have kids in school, and I'm looking at the future, like, being able to flex your time to work like 6 to 3 and be able to get home with those kids. I think, but again, I mean, Brady has a different set of priorities. He's not a parent. He's young. He's new into his career, and he will leave me. I know he will, and it'll be 3 to 5 years. And him and I talked about this like his first week. I told him, I was like, yeah, it's probably a 3 to 5 year job. He's like, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Because he's going to move up. He wants to do. He has an actually degree in HR. I mean, that's where I got him from. But I think some of your benefits, at least for me, is being more flexible, being able to roll over some of your vacation time that you're not using. And pay is always helpful too.
Awesome, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, go ahead, David, please.
I would echo a lot of what Bailey said, especially with the rollover with vacation. I don't like the whole use it or lose it thing. That's hard for all of my employees. And we don't start with a whole lot of vacation, and then it's 5 years until, like, especially entry level, they get 2 weeks, and then I gotta wait 5 years to get another week. It just seems like a long time to get that extra little bit of time. My office is unique, as each other office is. And I think what's going to be hard for me, especially my entry level planning position, and maybe even my addressing quarter position, is there needs to be a way to provide more opportunities to, I guess, advancement opportunities, which I'll probably ask for something like that here in the near future. But I have an assistant planner position, which is entry level. My last assistant planner, he lasted 2 years, and then he went somewhere else. The hard part is with planning positions and specific professional positions in my office is you get people from other places, right? I'm probably like the last assistant planner that's been around for a long time, because I came here and then I was promoted, and I've been here for quite a while, but I can just see the trend continuing. Joe's from Kansas. I don't know how long he'll stick around here, especially if I can't provide some advancement for him. So some of those things, I would say that I do like our benefits, other than, just some tweaking with the vacation. I do think we have pretty good benefits if you look across, other places. And I think that's about all I have to say about it.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Rob?
I think with the road and bridge, one thing that's unique about our department is we do have a lot of flexibility in hours, and we don't deal with the public per se face to face unless they're mad at us. And so the 4-day weeks is a big seller, but also it seems like after you hit a breaking point of, I've been here for 6 years or 7 years, the benefits that you obtain because of getting more vacation time and stuff, it makes it a little harder to go somewhere else. Now, we've hired, in the last 3 years, three younger individuals, and they last about 6 months, and then they're ready to go somewhere else. So, partly because they want to run a motor grader, and I got 7 guys already running motor graders, that have been there, and they do a good job at it. So the younger guys look there and go, well, I don't want to dig post holes all the time or put up signs or things like that. And the hard part in our department now is they have to have a CDL to be able to drive the heavy equipment or the dump trucks. And it's becoming harder and harder to get people that have the CDLs. In a little bit, it's kind of like the sheriff's department. You have to, if we train them, I can guarantee you they probably won't stay very long if they're young, because let's face it, we can't pay it as much as some of the other construction outfits. So.
Is it fair to say that so in the construction business, it's like feast or famine, right? You can go out and work, and benefits aren't necessarily that great. So if you're young and healthy, you want the hourly dollars, and then you're probably more likely to get people who killed themselves getting the hourly rate wages, and they start to age a little bit and they realize, I want regular hours and I want benefits, and I don't have anything saved for retirement. And then to me, I think it would be hard to take somebody and start them out doing that, because they don't understand the value of the benefits and they want the hourly rate.
Right.
And so you're training somebody else's workforce. If you if you hire somebody too young, but sometimes you get an old hand who really knows what he's doing. And he's sick of working 18-hour days,
Right.
driving all over the country and then getting laid off.
The older guy's ready to have the 40-hour week versus the 70-hour week. And benefit, they're ready for, they want some security in their health.
So it's interesting because to me, heavy equipment and road and bridge is kind of similar to being a cook in the jail, right? Like, you know, if you're a bartender and you're up till umpteen hours in the morning and you're dealing with people in your face and you're in food service, at some point you're like, oh, you're right. Health insurance benefits, I have kids, I can take them to school and go to work or, you know, whatever, and then go home for dinner, or, you know, that's a kind of a lifestyle thing. I think that a lot of these positions that we have, you can take skills that you learn, and people also like to be challenged, right? They like to learn things. And if you know, I don't know if you're the addressing coordinator, lots of things that we do aren't as dynamic as private business because we do tasks that are related to the government services that we provide, you know, so the ability to challenge yourself intellectually and professionally, there's a box around that because of the box around our duties. You know, it's not like you're working for Intel or United Airlines or something. And the operation is small. So like in David's office, you know, the only way the assistant planner is going to get to move up is if you retire or you decide to take another job. And there aren't that many jobs in your department, right? So anyway.
Yeah. Kurt, do you have any idea? You're online there. Any takeaways or?
Yeah, we actually just lost an employee to Laramie County, and they start out about $21,000 more than we do. And I know we may not be able to compete head to head, but Peg brought in several new attorneys, and my office is pretty young. And we're pretty low on the pay scale as far as new attorneys kicking off. I mean, that individual was only here for about 6 months before he moved on. You know, he got some experience, got in the courtroom. We pay bar fees. We send out for training as well. And I have the same concerns with that turnover. And it's, you know, attorneys are a bit of a different beast. You know, they can always just start their own business if they want. Anybody can hang a shingle because they have the professional license. I think our staff is in good position as far as legal assistance and support staff. But I have some concerns about my younger attorneys.
Have you any thoughts about, in addition to money, things that might make it interesting to stay if we couldn't pay the 21,000 like we can in Laramie? Is there somewhere that?
Yeah. I think exactly what I think other people have said, a little bit more flexibility with, you know, working at home if they can. In my office, what I care about is you make your court appearances, you get your work done, and you do what you need to do. I mean, I don't necessarily care that you're sitting there 10 hours a day. What I care is, you know, what you can do, who you know in your relationships. So I think anything along those lines with, you know, I know Rob does the 4-day work weeks. It doesn't necessarily work for attorneys as well, but offering some extra time off, particularly if they're doing a lot of trials or working a lot of weekends to compensate them for that, because they are all salaried employees. Things of that nature will go a long way. Things like what Christina did yesterday with the Easter egg hunt, little things like that to kind of make the office a bit more exciting than just sitting and typing out motions and reviewing discovery and talking to attorneys. I think the younger generation definitely wants flexibility. They don't necessarily look at health insurance and retirement, as other people have said, because they're young and they're healthy and they're not looking to the future. And that's just the nature of the beast, I think. So finding anything to make, you know, our work environment more attractive. I agree with the use it or lose it vacation thing is not popular. It does require people to take vacation when honestly they don't want to. I mean, I think we could cap what we'll pay out for time off and let them build up, and it doesn't really hurt us at that point. And then that way they can take, you know, longer vacations if they would like to, you know, instead of taking a few during one year, take, a big 2-year or 3-year trip to Europe for a month or something like that. I think that would be a big sell for the employees. I think that would really help them out. But yeah, I think there's a lot of strategies. And then talking to Christina, I think she had some good innovative ideas, and not only getting people to stay a little bit longer, but in the long term. I mean, my office has had a lot of flux for multiple reasons. But we don't, I mean, I was there for almost 10 years, and I think Jim was there for a long time, but more recently, we have not had people stay long periods of time. They tend to come and tend to move out. And that amount of turnover has a lot of costs, and not just financial, particularly in the attorney field, because they build relationships with the courts, with defense counsel, with law enforcement. They get practical experience about how things work, particularly in this jurisdiction. And anything we can do to keep people longer just has a lot of tangible and intangible benefits.
Thanks, Kurt. Stacy, anything?
I'm fortunate, I think, because I have longevity in my office. But I think some flexibility. I totally agree with the use it or lose it, getting rid of that. I think capping what would be paid out if somebody doesn't stay here for 5 years and accumulate it all and then say, okay, now I'm leaving and I want you to pay for my 5 years of all that accumulation of vacation. I think a cap on what can be paid out should you leave is only logical, but I think giving them the opportunity to, like we've all said, we have small offices, and there comes a time when, your schedules don't allow for you to be able to let somebody go. And all of a sudden they're at their end of year, and it's like, do you let them go and you run short staffed during that time when you need them most, or they lose their vacation? So I think that's a big thing, and would be a benefit to the employees. I think they would appreciate that. My other thing, which is kind of taking the wind out of Christina's sails, but I think being a little bit flexible on what the benefit package is too, because there's benefits that you may want the whole benefit package of the insurance and the retirement and the everything, but the younger generation that's coming in doesn't see some of that as a benefit. And if they got a little compensation in lieu of that, that might be a selling point. So like I said, I'm fortunate. I have long-standing employees. Wages for them would be a big thing because they all take advantage of all the benefit packages, I believe. But I think being more flexible with vacation times, and to a degree, I might be able to, I think they would appreciate a flex schedule. My office has to be open statutorily 8 to 5, so it would be something that I would have to have, that coverage, but we could flex within the office, when people work. That probably could become more important when we start doing the e-filing, because attorneys will be able to file into the e-filing 24/7, 365. So we could come in on a Monday morning and have 100 filings in there. So if you have somebody that's coming in and working from 6 to 3 every day, they have from 6 to 8 o'clock when you have no person walking through the door that they could work those things. So moving forward, that could be a flex schedule, could be something that would be beneficial to our office too.
I have a question. To me, I think that the department heads and elected officials, that you have the ability, without asking the commission, to figure out the smartest and best way to, according to your people's needs, including working from home and all of that. Like, I don't think that that's ever been a mandate from this commission, right?
Yeah.
So if there's anybody who's ever been resistant to that or thought they couldn't do that, That's an operational thing that you do inside your own operation. I mean, the only place maybe where people might have been limited are the department heads who work directly for us. But even the department head who works directly for us, if we required that person to be in their office, I don't think that extends to their people. I don't know that we have done that. I'm just saying, part of the nature of that position is that you have that flexibility as the manager.
So what's interesting is that the courthouse operates 8 to 5, right? Because we're a public entity. And so I think everyone has always been under the assumption that because we're 8 to 5, employees have to be here 8 to 5. Now, with that said, what has happened in the past, and because no one has outwardly said, we accept this idea, what ends up happening is if Stacy lets her people go or work 6 to 3, well, the courthouse, it's like high school, right? So then the treasurer's office says, well, did you know Stacy's employees work 6 to 3 and we don't get to work 6 to 3? And why does that get to happen in one office and not the other? What they don't understand is that she's maybe fitting her needs, but maybe Tracy can't allow people to work 6 to 3. So I think the conversation and just everybody being aware that it is acceptable, and then employees understanding that it's whatever is dictated is not the right word, but whatever the elected official department head sets as their schedules is for them in that office in particular. But what ends up happening is we have a lot of, well, so-and-so is doing this over here and so-and-so is doing this over here. And why do they get this special treatment and we don't get this special treatment? So that's why we're having the conversation.
Back office versus front office, right? I mean, like.
Exactly. And that's, and no fault of anyone here, but people have a hard time seeing that sometimes, right? They just see, well, so-and-so gets this benefit and I don't, and why, but not really understanding why someone else may have that. During our meetings with my meetings with department head elected officials, I was asked, well, how are we going to make it fair? And my response was, we're not. I don't have a way to make it fair across the board, because what works in Tracy's office and what works in Jackie's office may not work in Stacy's office. And as long, in my opinion, and some of this upcoming generation, to get to your point, is, as long as we're offering the same or similar, or everybody understands what the expectations are for those offices, that's what's important. So I don't want to be this cookie cutter, everybody falls within an 8 to 5 schedule, which I think is where we were, and we're trying to get out of that. So that's why we're having the dialogue, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's not that
I was already there. I never knew that people, I know that some people have to be at the counter to register vehicles.
Well, it goes back to 6 years ago when we did the first salary grade, and we sat in a room with all the elected officials and we had that same conversation where, well, Tracy's front office entry level couldn't make more than Jackie's, couldn't make more than Stacy's, couldn't make more. And I keep picking on those guys just because they're in front of me. But the reality of it is that's the mentality that we used to have, is that these positions were all the same, or all these offices were the same and needed to operate the same. But now the reality is they're not that way. Everybody works differently. Everybody can have different schedules. As long as we're open to the public 8 to 5, it really doesn't matter, as long as those needs are getting served.
So if I was a employee who aspired, a person who aspired to work for the county, and I see 2 positions that are similar, and one is 8 to 5 dealing with the public, and the other is some mix of both, and I need more flexibility, I might prefer one position over the other.
Sure.
So one of the things we might be taking out of the equation is the preference of the employee, right? And some people like that structure and they don't want to work from home because when you work from home, then you don't have a clean distinction between work and home, and that adds stress, right? Or a hard start time and a hard stop time. So it can even be personality specific.
Sure, exactly. But I think to Stacy's point is that even though it hasn't ever been dictated by the commission, there's always been this overlying thing that our offices are 8 to 5, our employees need to be here 8 to 5. I recently shared an exit interview with you guys from an employee who said, if I come in and I work hard and I get my stuff done at 3 o'clock, As long as I'm making up those hours somewhere else, why can't I go home? Especially if I'm not helping the public, let me flex that out. And so it just goes to show that all these offices are different, which is why we're kind of talking about separate salary grades, separate pay. Now we couldn't do different benefits for different offices. We'd have to do that countywide, but just trying to be a little bit more open and outside of the box about what we really can offer to employees.
Isn't it interesting that 6, 7, 8 years ago, internet speed, IT security, multiple authentication, like all of the things that the computing power of smaller computers, the COVID, even, like, we're in a totally different environment than we were when we had the discussion 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, right?
So Dell just released an article this past year or this past month that said since COVID, they've saved $12 million from their company, allowing their staff to work from home and have flexible schedules. Because working from home and having flexible schedules, they don't have to rent buildings anymore. They don't have to pay for rent. They don't have to pay for lights. They don't have to pay for, they still have to pay for office equipment, but all of those things. And they've saved $12 million by allowing a flexible schedule and people working from home if they can. Now, of course, we don't have that full ability because we are a public entity. But I think that we can still save money in other areas. Stacy mentioned it and Kurt touched on it a little bit. And I have some ideas that the other purpose of this meeting today is I want to run some general ideas by you guys, because what I'm going to ask, and I have consensus from most, will take some time for us to figure the numbers and the savings for you guys. And I don't want to ask the budget team to have to figure things 15 times because it's a lot of time and work. And so if there are ideas that you're not interested in, we won't go down that path. But I want to talk about some of those things. Rob and I have talked about it too. And Stacy mentioned it, health benefits, the younger generation, they don't even really care about having health insurance. Either under the age of 26, they can be put on their parents' insurance. They don't want the insurance. And so when we talk about the overall benefits package, it's not the same, because if we're paying 2 people $50,000 and one chooses health insurance benefits and one doesn't, so one might have an $80,000 package, but the one that doesn't choose health insurance, is at $50,000 comparatively. And so one of the ideas that we have is, if somebody doesn't want health insurance, maybe we offer them, and I'm going to use the term stipend. Legal and I are working on that and what that would be called. But maybe we offer them a monthly stipend for not electing health insurance. Not only does it save the county because we pay out portions from the employer side for health insurance, but then because we're self-insured, if they're in a major medical, or if they have a major medical accident or are in an accident, we get into our stop loss, and then we spend money out of that. And so there's a whole other stream of money that we could potentially save from if someone doesn't elect our health insurance. So maybe we say, if you don't choose health insurance, we give you a $400 a month stipend, because we're still saving money. At minimum, I think our employee, what is the employee only portion for the employer? The employer portion, it's like $900 and some dollars, right? Yeah. So even if an employee were to select employee only coverage, the county is automatically paying out $800 a month for that employee. If we give them a $400 stipend for not selecting health insurance, we're off the bat saving $400.
Because they might be getting it through their spouse
Exactly.
or university.
We have 2 guys that basically their spouse covers them wherever she's working. And so there's a pretty good difference between what this individual's actually making compared to maybe one that's even actually lower in our system, because he's not using the health insurance, where the other one's using the family insurance, which is even more than the individual. So, it's actually costing the county quite a bit more money per hour for this individual. Is actually making more dollars per hour because of the benefits.
The point is that we look at the dollars, the wages paid, or the salary category, and not the total package cost
Now, one thing
of an employee.
You'd have to be careful of is, okay, I'm going to start getting this stipend, so maybe I guess since it's a stipend, you could take it away. Maybe, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
versus if you gave them a raise and then also, I got a raise, so now I'm going to start taking the insurance.
Well, I don't think you would pay Wyoming retirement system money on the stipend, only on the base salary.
It has to be part of a flexible benefits plan from the research that I've done, which is not a lot,
I'm
just
sure that-
generally, and I'm not quite certain how it sets up yet, but
And can you come in and out of it that easily?
I don't have all of those. They call it a cash in lieu of benefits option, and it has to be part of your section 125 plans, those flex spending plans.
Yeah, and you have to be careful too, actuarially,
Yes.
because if your health plan has only old people on it, you got a very dangerous health plan that's
Right.
subsequent to go bankrupt at any time, right? And so that has been the devastation of many a health plan, is when you don't have a wide breadth of age groups represented in it, because you're right, young people don't use health benefits. But as oldies, we surely do. And that's how it goes. You get too many oldies and not enough youngins, you got troubles.
Well, I sit on a couple of boards, one which is part of the county, where the executive director recently said she doesn't want the benefit of retirement whatsoever. She wants more vacation time so that she and her husband just take off. They have no intention of ever having kids. They don't want any money to have to deal with later on in life because they're going to live life right now. So I think, I love this conversation because I
It's
think
really
it's clear
interesting.
that the traditional work environment has got to be changed all the way around here. It's just, it's not meeting the needs of who we have hired right now or potential.
I'd like to hear from if anybody else, like Jackie or Tracy or Sheriff or Chelsea, if you guys have anything.
Yeah, so our office, again, like everybody else, really weird. We only have actually one county employee. The rest that are counties are grant. So that's different. But our one employee who is county grant has been here 10 years and she's never opted for insurance. She gets it through her spouse. You know, so she would love that idea of having the stipend or whatever you want to call it. I think our big thing, we have like, looking at this is kind of funny because our big thing, we can't keep a nurse for more than 2 years. Like they just come and they go. So we have two nurses that have been here 7 to 10 years, but we deal a lot, like half of our office is state employees. They haven't gotten a raise, like in the 7 years she's worked here, she hasn't gotten a raise. So the state is working on compensating for that as well. My big thing is finding like a balance because they are state and county, but I think a great idea is, you know, not having to use it or lose it. We do find that as public health, like when the university and the schools are closed, nobody's coming in, you know? So to have a flexibility of like, you know, going on a different schedule would definitely make that easier. I mean, we end up sitting there, you know, when the kids are out of school, everybody's like doing stuff. They're not coming in for vaccines. So we just end up just being there, you know? So that flexibility of having different hours definitely would be nice.
Are you allowed to do that? Are there rules that you're
Technically, I
under?
don't think so. I mean, we're like the rest of the county, 8 to 5. So I don't really know how that would work, but we can definitely see the flux of like when school's starting, you know, we're busy. Then they get all their shots, everything's caught up, but they go on vacation, like the schools are closed, the university's closed.
Can you think of a private business that stays full staffed for the operating hours, even when they can anticipate?
Right.
You know, like a restaurant, do they just stay staffed up like a Saturday morning, even on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah,
No,
like-
they don't.
Right, you
That's
like, you know,
weird
you
like
cut
that.
people, like, okay, you can go home, okay, you can go home, did you do your side work, get out of here, you know, but, and then again, it is hard because like the grant funded positions, they have a lot more flexibility with being able to work from home, whereas the state nurse who runs clinic and Jill, who runs the front office, they're literally at the office 8 to 5. So there's that like huge, like, unless we're closing the office, those staff nurse, the staff nurse in the county position, they can't leave. They can't leave at all. And then, I don't know. So I definitely agree with the vacation and trying to find some, I don't know,
flexibility with, we can totally predict when we're gonna be busy and when we're not, but yet we're all still there. So.
Does the state allow you that flexibility? Because
So
I don't know that we,
state will allow us to close if you guys grant us permission, but it's like a process,
right,
they have to follow whatever the county would allow us to do, but it's not that easy, right? To be like, hey, we're gonna close, on the Friday of Jubilee days because nobody can even park in front of our office, and they're certainly not coming in to get a, COVID or flu shot while Jubilee's going on. But
with a beer in their hand.
yeah, right. So like, there's little things like that, it's just, but I do see the benefits of like the stipend, because like I said, the employee who's been there 10 years, she's never once used insurance, but she's never been like compensated for that, and that would be nice.
So we're too rigid.
Yeah, go ahead, Roy, please. I just had a comment on, like you touched on inflation and stuff, and I know probably 80% of the people in this room own their own house. But as your entry level people, I think when it comes to rent in Laramie, it's always been high because of the university. And as property values go up, Chelsea will probably tell you that rents also go up. And I think we're gonna see a lot of that entry level people that either can't afford to be in Laramie, or maybe they're piling with 5 roommates like they did in college. But it's getting harder and harder so that entry level position might be, I don't know, the increase in that would be good to help those people out, because rents are definitely going to be going up, or have already, from what I've heard.
Well, even the median selling price of a home in Laramie right now is $325,000. How can a 23-year-old afford that?
Yeah.
Any first-time home buyer? Yeah, they can't. You just can't. Yeah, and so in my office, I'm kind of split. I have some longevity there, and I think that I will continue to have that longevity. But for like my field staff and my front office staff, those are like rotating doors. And I am getting to the point where I just can't get people to stay. I've lost one to the university. I have another one who's young. They're starting a family. They can't afford a house here, so they're leaving, they're moving. I just hired another one. He literally stocks shelves at Walmart at night and then comes and works for the county. I don't know when the kid sleeps, and that's not sustainable, right? I'm gonna lose him to Walmart.
Right.
So I really think we have to do something. I think the starting pay is a good place. The vacation, adding another week would be huge, and it's 40 hours. Adding another week, I think, to that beginning package would be huge. I think a lot of them would like the idea of a stipend. Anything that we can do to attract people. I don't expect that those positions will be 10-year, 20-year things, but it would be great if I could have them for 5 years, especially with all of the money that I put into them for their certifications and their uniforms and all of that. I really think that would help make that position more desirable.
Yeah.
I do want to say thank you though for the holiday schedule coming up. That was a nice one, getting the Friday and the Monday. That made a huge difference, for Christmas and then New Year's. I mean, people were like really excited about that. And then Juneteenth, like, heck yeah, I'll take that Monday off. Right? Yeah, like I appreciate that,
Yeah, the Easter egg hunt stuff, little things like that.
Like,
My staff
so
loves stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
I had a question on the vacation. Because I don't, the idea and another 40 hours is fine, but I think as a naysayer or whatever, or pessimist, how do you pay for the person and I would do the same thing, going, okay, I'm at my anniversary, now I get that whole next year's vacation thrown into my lap, or not my lap, but so I'm not going to retire, or I'm not going to quit until after my anniversary date, so I can get that basically a severance pay.
So the way to kind of deal with any of your flexible benefits is to not only offer the flexible benefits, to make sure that there's caps on the flexible benefits as well. So in terms of vacation, I agree. I think a third week would be great. Some of the things that I've talked about with Christina is building up to that third week, but in a shorter truncated time. The university, if you're an hourly wage, it takes you 7 years to get to your full 22 days off. I think we could do it in a shorter amount of time here, but they also cap how many hours you can have total. They also cap how much that they pay out. And so I think definitely here with us having a little bit of a blend going into this next 4-year term, we need to take a look at that and not only offer the flexible benefits, but also really discuss what our caps are going to be on there. Because there is a financial liability that you have with that. Not every department can, pay out, 6 months worth of vacation. I'll use myself as an example. When I got appointed, the university has a cap on their vacation at 352 hours. And then they had just changed the rules to where they only pay out half of their sick time. And so when I came over here and started working here, I was still getting paid out all of my paid time off until about June of last year. So now the university wants to take on that financial liability, and of course I'm not going to say, I'm not paying that much back. But definitely that's some of the things that we would want to look at the county and being like, hey, look, yeah, you can roll your, we'll get rid of the cap on your vacation. You don't have to use it within the year. You can roll it over, but we say, hey, maybe you're capped at, 100 hours, 120 hours, 4 weeks, that type of thing. You can cap the payout as well, or say, hey, look, yeah, you can roll it over, but if you leave work, you only get 2 weeks. Most places aren't even paying out sick time anymore. So, and we already roll over the sick time. So,
and Rob, with a lot of your people, not your people necessarily, but we're going to see that generation change anyway. So what used to be, and even in my 7 years here, where people would do that, wait until they hit their anniversary date to get that cash payout, this younger generation, the newer trends are showing they don't think that far ahead. And so if it's honestly, I don't mean no disrespect, but they don't. And so if it's if they have the opportunity for another job where they make $5 more an hour, they don't care. They're going to quit and go to that other job. And so that will help reduce, it'll be an ebb and flow for sure, but that'll help reduce some of our liability, because the newer generation isn't thinking long-term. So we'll still be 50-50 for a little bit, because we still have quite a few of those older employees that will do those things. But as we move forward, we're going to see that become less and less, in my opinion.
What's interesting about that, it can seem short-sighted and dumb, like for the young generation to do that. But if you think about it, like in Silicon Valley, people go from company to company to company, and oftentimes they get back to their original company that they started at with all of the accumulated knowledge and experience of the others' jobs. And they come back at a higher position in that company than if they had stayed with that company the entire time. In other words, they increase their value as they increase their challenges and their professional development. So the point is, if you stay in there and hang on for dear life, you only move up half as far as you might have if and actually that cross-pollination helps the industries, right? Because you get people with unique experience and they accumulate more of it and they bring more value. So it's interesting that people can see that and would do that, at the expense of a chunk of money. Now the history lesson on the ability to carry over benefits is, I want to say 4 years ago and 5 years ago, we were facing 15 or 17% budget cuts, and then 3 or 4 the next year. In 2 years, we cut 20%. And one of the issues that we had is that from a budgeting standpoint, you have to book all the liabilities. So when we had people who had accrued an insane amount of vacation, we had to book that liability, which meant that we had to keep the cash on hand to pay it out if they exercise the option to retire or get the payout. And so when the county operation needed to operate, day to day, and you have this big chunk of cash sitting over here that has to sit there, we really didn't have a choice. We had to curtail that so that we could take some of that money that had to be set aside for that liability and put it into use operating the county. It was brutal. I mean, we were down to like, how many pens are we going to buy or not buy? Those budget years were really hard. And I think at the time the commissioners knew that what we were doing, we probably went further than we wanted to. I mean, it was a problem, like Sheriff Applehines is saying. It was more like the university where you could just accumulate time until you were going to get 6 months of pay after you stopped working, or something, a 6-month severance, that's a lot for us to book on an aging workforce. So to me, if I sum up what I've heard today, it is increase starting pay, it's step up accrual, step it up from 5 years to maybe even more year to year, how many paid time off days a person can accrue. We need to increase the carryover of the paid time off. We need to consider or figure out how to pay a stipend in lieu of the benefit package. We haven't discussed dealing with inflation, but I'm going to tell you that like the pressures on just fuel.
Yeah.
Just think about fuel. You guys are going backwards. You're not earning less money, but you're earning less money, or your buying power is going backwards, and not even by a little, and everybody knows it. So, and then of course the flexible work environment, allowing people to work from home. And from my perspective, I don't think that one right there is the easiest one. There's an IT consideration and a security consideration, that requires the conversation with IT, but I don't even think that requires an official act or process or pay or anything from this commission. I think that managers can decide the best way to manage your people and your workload without coming to us, to accommodate your
universal thing.
Well, I mean,
countywide, it could be per
right.
department.
I mean, law enforcement, you got to be out there pounding the streets, and yet, like the flexibility that the sheriff can offer isn't the same as the flexibility of HR, let's say, because there are things that you could take your laptop anywhere and do work from anywhere. The question only would be accessibility to you by employees, but I don't know if they email you and say, can I come see you in your office, or if they make an appointment, or if they just walk in. Like, I'm not even prepared as a commissioner to micromanage that. I would leave that to you. You know how to make yourself available to the employees and how that interaction works. I wouldn't even want to go down there in the weeds.
Yeah, so there's a couple things statistically that I'll just throw out there with what we found. So 52% of employees that take time off still work during their time off, which is a huge percentage, myself included. Even when I'm off, I'm always checking email or my phone's ringing. So I thought that was interesting. The other thing, when we talk about increasing paid time off, is the data is showing that 55% of Americans don't use all of their time paid off, but they like to know that it's there. So they enjoy they enjoy knowing, and that's all we're talking about, right? And we hear it on exit interviews that employees want more time off, but the reality of it is, and the data shows that they don't use all their time off. They just want to know that they have it if they have it. I'm going to wrap up a couple of things too while they're on my mind. So a couple policy changes. that I want to talk about implementing is editing our sick policy, our sick time off, because Stacy had brought up a really great example, and she talked about bereavement leave and somebody who doesn't fall within our definition of bereavement leave. Maybe it was a close friend of hers that doesn't live here in the state and she wants to go to the funeral. Well, per our bereavement leave, she can't use bereavement leave the 3 days to go. And maybe she's a newer employee and she doesn't have a lot of vacation time, or she's used her vacation time already, because you never know when somebody's going to die. And now she's got to make a choice of whether or not she can go to her best friend's funeral in Florida, or if she has to stay and work or take the leave unpaid. And she brought up a good point. I'm like, why do we care? You know, if somebody wants to go or needs to go, why can't they go? Or if your parent dies, we had an employee whose parent died and they were like, 3 days bereavement is not enough. I got to go figure out the trust, and we got to figure out, you know, all of these things. And so I think just having that flexibility would be nice. The other thing to touch on is cost of living increase. So I asked everyone when we met, you know, if the county could consistently offer a cost of living increase, what percentage would you like to see? On average, we got 3% as the number. Between 2 and 3% was the average consensus from most. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about. So Pete asked to do the salary survey, which we did. Before that, it had been 5 years. And so what happens if you don't continually give a cost of living increase is we get to a point now where this number's at what, 284,000, and that's to just bring people up to the market value. And so if we can consistently give a cost of living increase, even though they're not the same with salary, it's going to keep us in line with that salary data as it increases, because positions don't go up by $5,000 or $10,000 from year to year. They go up $500, they go up $2,000, right? Small increments. But if we're consistently giving cost of living increases on top of the salaries, that'll keep us in line with where we need to be market wise. And so I would ask that the commission consider a cost of living increase. And then you can't bind for future commissions, but we consider that as a county moving forward, that every year we're giving a cost of living increase, whether it's 2% or 3%, but to stay in line with those market values. I was gonna say one other thing, but I don't remember.
I'll echo on that. So when the sheriff's office asked for raises last year, we set up our own internal matrix just for our department, which I also encourage every department to do on there. But then we came to that commission and said, if we can sock some money to the side and then look at these cost of living increases, not only will it keep us up with inflation, but really what the cost saving is that there's a large initial investment to bring everybody up to market. But as long as you keep up with these increases, the increases you ask for every year get to be exponentially smaller. So to give you an example, we asked for that market increase at the sheriff's office last year, and it was a huge chunk of money. This year, with all of our cost of living increases, you know, for that money that we set aside, I mean, it's only going to come out from my office, what, like 30, I think an extra $30,000. I mean, that's for my entire office to get that cost of living increase. So I would really encourage us looking not only to bring people up to market, that'll be a high initial cost, but taking money, especially if we have years where we have surplus money, socking that aside so we're not living paycheck to paycheck. It's going to be much easier for us to give these step increases at a lower cost and keep up with either normal cost of inflation. Right now we're at an abnormal cost of inflation, but it should even out. It'll keep you competitive with other agencies that you have competitors with as well. And like I said, it does kind of minimize your costs over time. So you won't have huge initial costs. You're not going to have to, like we look at here, put $250,000 into account to raise people up. You'll look at something much more manageable. And so, and even if you do start to have boom and bust years, again, much more manageable because your numbers you'll be lower, and you'll be able to affect things across the board throughout your entire organization, not necessarily department specific.
The other thing I was going to say was when we talked about lost time, people are talking about the use it or lose it policy. We had 53 employees that lost time in the last year, lost vacation time because they didn't have the opportunity to use it. Which when we have a population of 155, that's half of our employees that lost vacation time. And so for whatever reason, that's a large amount of people that lost time. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
You know what's gonna happen? We allow them to accrue faster and carry over more. When they hit the cap, they're gonna lose it again. Because there's a certain culture of who we are and the way we work. So it's like like you're saying, there's a perceived value, but if I'm not gonna use my time, I'm not gonna use my time. Although I guess if my mother died and I needed to go take care of that, well, then I would have that there, and maybe in that case, I wouldn't lose any, but I'm gonna guess, if we were to increase step up the accrual of time off and allow more to be carried over with a cap, of course, I'm gonna guess that we would have this temporary time where a couple of years where people didn't lose, didn't have to give it back. And then at some point we would kind of be back where we are, right? So.
But that's what I was saying though, right? They don't care that when they have that, they don't care that they lose it at that point. They just like knowing the fact that they have the extra time. Even if we put a cap and we don't pay all that out, they don't care about that. They just want to know that they have the time. That's perceived as a benefit, which is an interesting way to look at it, but that's really what they do.
Well, it is security.
Yeah, it is.
It's like a high deductible insurance policy.
Well, and I think in the light of COVID, several of my staff were like, what happens if I get COVID and you guys aren't paying COVID time anymore? I have no time. So I'm going to go 3 weeks unpaid because if I get it and then my kid gets it and then my husband gets it, like here I am stuck in quarantine and I don't really have the option for people to work at home because our software is so specific and we have to have licenses and it's really hard to work from home. So those people are just out.
So it means that people like to work and they like to be productive and they intend to work and be productive. And they also need that security that if something blows up in their life, they're covered.
Tracy, do you guys?
I'm the minority here, and minority in the sense that more than half of my staff has 15 plus up to 33 years of experience. So we're talking 6 years or 6 weeks of vacation. We're talking 3 personal days. We're talking 960 hours of sick time. Okay, my people take it or lose it, and I believe employees have to have their own accountability.
Sure.
And so if they don't take it, it's their fault. I'm not here to babysit and say, hey, you've got such 6 hours or 6 days of time to use, you better use it or you lose it. I mean, if I'm able to manage, and that's just the way I am, 15 employees to take anywhere from 2 weeks of vacation to 6 weeks of vacation plus 3 personal days plus sick time in a given year, and it works. It works. And so I'm not of the mind, and of course, I'm the short-term person here. I want to do what's in the best interest of the county as a whole. I wanted, and I asked Christina if I could ask my employees what their thoughts were, and I haven't. And so they may have a different opinion of how I feel, but we've been able to manage, and we've been able to manage because we can't close the doors to the public. We have to be open the hours that we are. I've offered flex time. Amanda's currently on flex time. It's an individual's need. And so I like the idea of maybe looking at ways to compensate, but I'm worried in the future for sustainability. I'm worried about, if the money is there today, will it be there in 3 to 5 years? And will we face another 2017 where employees are laid off? Like I said, I only care because I care about the people that work here, because they are what makes county government work and what Albany County is. But I'm concerned that it sounds great, but reality is, guys, per capita, we're the lowest income in per capita. We don't have the resources that other counties do. And my fear is if the state no longer funds over the cap money, where are we going to come up with that $3 million that we've been able to get over the past few years? And with the cost of inflation, how is it going to happen? So I apologize for being the minority in the sense that I'm not one that's in favor. I'm in favor of some of the benefits, but I think if you look at the big picture, it's not going to be sustainable. Sorry to be.
Well, it's interesting. See, my brain is kind of doing this thing, right? So your office is a little bit of a unicorn because you have people who
Actually stay.
you have a more aged workforce that have already accrued all of those benefits, right?
Which makes it harder for them to go.
And so they're not inclined to go somewhere else. And it means probably that on balance, your labor cost is higher. And so if you're in a small office with lots of turnover, you just have an institutional knowledge problem and not enough cross training, right? So maybe, but you know what I'm saying? Like, if you have a smaller office, you have less elasticity or resilience, to. But I don't think that, I think that I'm understanding exactly what you're saying, and my sort of whatever actuarial abilities I have in my brain, what I see is that when we attract people who in this generation who aren't, we have to raise the starting pay, which would be hard in your office because you have a lot of people who get paid way up on the scale and they aren't maybe ready to retire yet. But at some point when they go out of the system and you're trying to, if you're looking at the average, if your starting pay is too low, you may not be able to replace those people with the kind that you want. So this is sort of an anticipatory thing, knowing that some of these costs on the back end are going to come down. So to me, I don't know that anyone would ever accrue as many sick days or vacation days as your people do if they want to continue on in their professional life after they work in your office for 3 or 5 or 7 or something years. Maybe you won't get 16-year employees, but the way to make it, the thing that makes it the most unsustainable is allowing, not capping the accrual of, it seems like before our caps on vacation were really high. People, if you worked here enough years, like every 5 years, bam, you get another week or whatever. You're 30 years in and you get,
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Like that's, so to me, what I'm hearing is you saying, well, that's unsustainable, but I'm not sure that that's what we're proposing. I think what we're saying is there would be a cap to the amount that you could accrue, but it would happen shorter and earlier in a person's employment. And then there would be a cap on how much you can carry over. So we would basically be shifting that long-term burden up to the front. Now, it would be hard to do initially because we have some employees who've been here a long time who are accruing benefits at they're sort of grandfathered into a different system, right? But ultimately, when that works through, we have to have institutional knowledge and continual training and transfer of knowledge, right? If we defer to the more aged and expensive people in our workforce, in terms of what they're, and we don't plan for the future in terms, the way to attract quality people on, like Tracy has way too much turnover in her office. It means that the only people in there's only 3 people in that office who know how to do everything. And that's a huge weight on them because there's not enough institutional knowledge there. If somebody key in there got sick with some long-term ailment like cancer or something, they would have a huge problem.
And Heber, to touch on Jackie's comment too, I would like to send a survey to the employees and ask what their feedback is, because we're assuming, right, that we think we know what they want. I mean, trends are showing us, but I am curious what our employees would like. And so I didn't want to send the survey until I met with the commission today to get a feel about some of the ideas, because we don't want to include questions that are just off the table. But I would like to know from the employees. And so the idea is, after the meeting today, Jan and I will create a survey that will go out to all the employees and ask them what is important to them. What benefits are they looking for? And we will do it anonymously, because I'm curious, how long do they want to stay? Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? What would get them to stay? And so I would hope that we can have some more data from our own internal folks after the meeting today.
Just by way of example, I just looked it up. The state has a tiered accrual program with the maximum vacation carryover after you've been there for 229 or more months. I'm bad at math. It doesn't tell me how many years that is. You can have 384 hours of vacation, which equates to 48 days. The university has an accrual balance that cannot exceed 352 hours, which is 44 days.
Yeah, and there is a difference, however, though, and I know you know it.
Right.
But the state has billions of dollars in rainy day savings account. The university has $880 million in their foundation. We don't.
Right.
And they can control their resources coming in. What did we have come from PILT 1.6 last week? What did we come from direct aid?
1.8 or 1.7 last year.
Yeah, so 3.3 million of our budget comes from sources we can't control.
Which is, it's 20% of our general fund.
And just to let you know, I mean, that there is $1 billion surplus at the state, and we got a little bit less than we got last year. So that $1 billion surplus is COVID relief money. And without that COVID relief money, there won't be $1 billion surplus at the state. And consequently, I wouldn't bet that they would give us more next year. And so those are the things that we're trying to balance, just to be honest about it. But I think the creativity, the conversation, I love the conversation. I love the survey, right? I think these guys might have some input to your survey. The program heads and electeds might be interested to run that by before they run it out to the folks and say, what do you think, right? Because I think this is somewhere we can do something. I think COLA for sure, right? That was the part of putting aside a salary account.
Our COLA raises are 1%. So we know that it doesn't necessarily keep up with inflation. But we know that is something that we can give people. And the reason why we did that is because the same thing that you said, Pete, we only have a limited number. We only have so many dollars that we can do. The 3%, when you guys run the numbers, you'll see a 3% is completely unsustainable. Because we ran it just with our department, and it gets exponentially huge really quick. So definitely having our caps on our benefits. I think expanding the benefits we can do for a relatively low cost. As long as we keep hard caps on it, that's what's going to make it sustainable. We do need to take a look at initial market raises, and that'll be an initial cost that we'll have to take a look at. And I do encourage us to really start to have those conversations and look at the weeds. We're on a little bit of a time crunch too. I do think we can get this done by the end of the budget cycle this year. But it's definitely something that we would need to go. I like the survey idea. On the other hand, I'm a little bit against it because we're on a time crunch. So we have elected official salaries that we're going to need to set before filing, to have that out as well. That's another financial conversation that we're gonna have to have. And then it affects everybody within the county also in terms of overall costs. And so I would implore the group, I was like, we need to roll up our sleeves and get moving on this fairly quickly. I like having the conversation and everything like this, but one of my goals today was not to leave out here without at least some initial decisions, guidelines, and timelines to get moving on this. If we wait another couple weeks and we have another circle conversation like this without any decisions, like I said, you're gonna have a lot of special meetings where we have to get working on this. So it is about time for us to really get into the weeds and see how much money that we have available, how much that we can put towards each department, and make it work for sustainability within the county. Christina has also talked about that a little bit, just to let everybody know it may not be fair, it may be equitable. But we're gonna have some disparities.
And I guess for me, all I need is, we wanted to present the ideas. If you guys are open to them, we already have the basis for new policies drafted and a direction to go. And so from my perspective, it won't take too long because as long as you guys are okay with some of those ideas, we can turn around policy and all of that pretty quickly.
Have you given us all those ideas today?
The only other thing that we didn't talk about is potential severance packages, and if the county wanted to offer that. We have a couple employees that are nearing retirement that have expressed interest. And with budget coming up, if we were to offer some sort of severance package, initially the cost may be there, but it will save us within this next fiscal year if we were to do so. And so the only other time we've done severance packages is when we laid off back in 2017, but I'm not talking about countywide. I'm talking specifically for retirees. And Jennifer and Kurt and I have had discussions about what potentially that could look like, because we have to be careful with what we do. But if it's something that you guys are interested in at least entertaining, Legal and I can come up with the draft of what it would look like to present. So
yeah, I'm interested, but the dollars are what I need to see. And so like this number, $284,000, what does that represent?
So those are all bringing everybody up to market with the salary.
So would that be the $30,000 a year jobs moving up?
Correct. Yep.
In each one of these?
Yep.
Okay, and what would those 30,000 move up to? Would that be 45,000?
We right around 40.
And this is that total number?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 3 departments missing because I don't have those done, but they're minimal. Fire, I haven't reviewed. Public health, which she only has one, and then EMA. So
are those raises including kind of the cost of living, or is that just, that's just to get them to?
That's like one time to correct the. And so to me, this 284, is it 284?
Yeah.
It probably helps employees that are in the worst trouble, I mean. And so the flip side to that, if we were gonna do something like that. So this is spitballing, right? Like in the case of Jackie's and my discussion, I'm thinking out loud, right? I'm not advocating for anything per se. But somewhere we're gonna come to what's possible and doable, right? And this is actually my most favorite work session that I've ever been to in my 7.5 years. This is really fun for me. I don't know why, it just is. If we were to consider severance for, like retirement incentives, the person who starts to replace somebody who's retiring is at a completely different level of accrued benefits and pay, right? So that could be a way to balance out or work from the other end, the need to do some of these things that are more front loaded. I don't think that that we can do what we maybe would try to do without some sort of action on the back end or the top end, like incentivizing retirements. And that's not a bad thing. When somebody's worked here a long time, we love them and we know the value that they bring. And sometimes it's time to move on to the next thing in your life. And it's, so sometimes people, that feels funny, kind of from an emotional perspective or something, but I don't think it is. I think it's just, so I'm having fun, and it would be interesting to prioritize these, right? If we couldn't do them all, to understand what would return the most value to the employees and to the county. Like I'm looking here, increasing starting pay. I think it has to be done, because it doesn't help you to hire somebody and train somebody if you can't keep them. There's a loss associated with having to do that over and over again, especially in law enforcement. It's brutal. What I hear in the attorney's office is that this is a great starter job and really good for professional development. And there's no way that a government attorney job is ever going to be able to pay what attorneys can make in the private sector. So what I think there is that, it's a little bit different, because they, the benefit to an attorney is the sort of the professional development at the same time they can pay their bills and eat. And
I don't have to run my own business. There's a lot of
and so,
benefit.
but we're not going to keep it. So I just think it would be fun to try to, some of these are non-cash expenses. Like if you step up the speed at which somebody, if you don't make them wait 5 years to get a week, maybe they get a day a year or 2 days a year. And on the back end, we cap the total amount that can ever be accrued. In other words, I want to be able to accrue it faster, but I'm never going to, if I'm going to have use or lose it or cap on the ability to carry it forward, I don't need 6 weeks of vacation. I'll never use that, right? I won't even be here that long. So I want to accrue vacation days faster and earlier. And ultimately, the county might never have the liability, even stepping that up. We might never have the liability that we currently have in that area. And that's sort of a non-cash expense, right? It costs productivity in an office. But if you have a labor budget, basically what you're doing is giving people time off instead of making them show up for work, right? And as technology develops, people get more productive. And then also because of flexibility, they work when they're on time off. So in a certain sense, we keep getting more and more productivity out of our employees. And we realize that, but we don't necessarily compensate them for that, say with time off, right? I don't know if you can follow what I just said, but
Tracy, you have something?
And I think Kurt did also, when you have a minute.
Okay, then we'll go to you, Kurt. Thanks.
Kurt or me? Or
You.
Me.
You.
Kurt. Okay.
Yeah. Please,
Very
sorry,
good.
Tracy.
I am very much on team getting rid of use it or lose it on the vacation. And I do realize there should be a personal responsibility. So I do agree with Jackie on that. But I think it's very demotivating for short-term employees, because I have that turnover that I'm sorry you can't take your time off at that time because we're busy, but guess what? You're going to lose it now. So no opportunity for you. I mean, that sounds more like a unbenefit. That's just my own opinion, but I think we can also find a version where they cap. So we limit our liability where if they do leave, they only get 80 hours paid out or whatever that magic number looks like. And because we don't have a lot of advancement opportunities, especially in my office, it's too small. I would have to lose my left and right hand who's sitting right there, Sonny. And I would never, ever want to see that day. But she might want to go back to Pinedale, I don't know. But I'm gonna talk to Emily about that, so that doesn't ever go that way. Anyway, the beginning pay, I've always wondered why it was so low, especially, and I can only speak for my office in this because you don't want to pay people handling thousands and thousands of dollars of cash, very little money, because there's that opportunity to be Aaron's customers.
Right, we call that embezzlement.
I want to give people that motivation, and so I am a very strong proponent in raising that front counter pay because I don't ever want to experience that. But one of the things I don't think that was brought up today is maybe some more countywide training opportunities that aren't sexual harassment, because I think those are boring because, I can make my own comedic jokes on this because, Bob Peterson isn't here anymore, shares all those good tips, but just kidding. But training opportunities, some of them can be countywide. Some of us do have some similarity things, like second floor, and probably Stacy's office as well. We all have customers. We all use customer service or diffusing an angry customer. I don't have the ability to send my entire staff out to a training on diffusing an angry customer. And then I'm stuck with which one of you want to do it? And then it seems like favoritism. So if we had a countywide, and maybe it's 2 sessions or something along those lines, but different opportunities, because I think training really motivates and charges people up to, oh my gosh, I'm going to try that tomorrow, or I can't wait till the next angry customer comes in.
Oh, we can still wait. It makes it easier when they are in.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem so awful.
Yeah.
Well, it sucks to be powerless or to not have the tools, in your toolbox to do something.
Yeah.
There's nothing more frustrating when people are dedicated to their jobs and they want to do a good job. And when you don't have the intellectual or physical tools to do it, that is seriously demoralizing.
Kurt, it looks like we have,
I just have one more thing.
oh, sorry.
One more thing, Kurt, I'm sorry. And maybe more fun things, because I think we get in the like mindset that they're not other people working in the offices. They're just, that's the other office. That's the attorney's office. I don't want to deal with them, but maybe if we have more friendly relations, on a personal level. Then.
You mean courthouse wide?
Yes, yeah. Countywide. I mean, because, we got some non-courthouse people out there in River Rock, but
COVID did beat down our sense of
family.
Like everybody goes and goes home and that's it. And it's messed with the mojo a lot.
Even if it's a potluck, everybody chips in. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm done now.
You okay? Kurt, you're up, please. Thanks, Kurt. Is it your birthday?
No, it's Adria's 40th was earlier this week.
Okay.
This week. Yeah, no, it's not mine though. No, thank you though.
Yeah. That was a really nice way to tell us it's your birthday.
Being subtle.
I'm 40 for how many years?
I wish I was 40. I just wanted to clarify something. So the employee we left did not go work for private practice. He went to work for another prosecutor's office down in Colorado. I think we could keep people in as attorneys being prosecutors. My biggest concern by far is that starting wage. We'll lose 2 more shortly. I have not a doubt in my mind. A lot of people don't like private practice and are happy being government attorneys. A lot of people want to be in Laramie. I think our high turnover over the past 10 years or so was more personality driven than displeasure with the job. I believe that is the case. I just want to make sure and listen to Commissioner Richardson that I didn't misconstrue things. For me, it really is that starting pay. And I think that will allow us to retain people.
Thanks, Kurt. And so I guess Christina or whoever, I don't know, whoever's in charge of this, I guess we've got the number for the starting salaries. Thank you very much. What would a COLA look like 1% system-wide, county-wide, what is that number? You know, what is,
1%?
yeah, what is 2%? And then we could split the difference between the two if we need to do something different.
Yeah, I'd run your models on 0.5% increases. So 1.5 to 2.5 and 3, you'll kind of see what that kind of looks like. It'll give you a good range of what it's gonna look like per year. Then you can start to model things out and see what's actually sustainable, what's not sustainable.
Yep, and then the severance numbers and what that money we suspect it would look like and what that might save if they were to all go away and when we break even, right? So like if those people leave, we're gonna have this big initial investment, but then over 2 years, maybe we recoup those losses or whatever that number is. And then the survey, what people would think were the quality of life issues that would be most useful to them. Use it or lose, it seems like you all seem to think that that is something that could change. Maybe there's something else or two things else, and then we could pick from whatever that looks like. I would, however, say that there's be nice if you guys would tell us what the minimum staffing level is, because that really does matter. If you give, you know, if you need 6 people and you got 7 in your office and everybody gets 5 weeks of vacation, at some point you ain't gonna have 6 people in your office. And so what is that minimum staffing level to do the job? And that's helpful to understand what we can do without putting you there at the front counter, Chelsea, and running back and doing other stuff too, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is Dave with the IT department. We had discussed a few things in our office about morale, and I haven't heard the mayor yet. Is this the place to do that, or should we just wait for the survey?
No, please do it. Go ahead. And
Okay.
then do it on the survey too.
Okay, some of the things that we thought about because of the uniqueness of the IT department and how hard it is to take time off when you've got 3 guys running it was if you did lift the use it or lose it and you were able to accrue, I'll just use some round numbers. Some things that we thought would be great for morale in our office is say you had 200 hours you could accrue year over year. Come say out your October paycheck, if you have say 150 hours of accrued vacation time sitting there, if the county could afford it, and this would be a decision made at each budget cycle, if you could afford it, you could have the opportunity to spend up to 40 hours of vacation, and then you'd be getting that money on your November 25th check, which is just in time for Christmas. So we thought that would be a great morale booster I think that you could use that across the entire county. Another idea that we had was you accrue sick time. And if you're a person that just doesn't get sick and never use that, but you do take vacations, if at the end of the calendar year, if you have X amount of sick time built up, you could turn, say, up to three days of sick time into vacation time.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Creative ideas. I like it.
It's interesting. That's fun.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just gonna say, when Commissioner Richardson was talking about like each year you can earn like an extra vacation day or whatnot. Well, how about like my other positions when you have like evals done and like maybe offering the extra vacation day, like merit based, like if you have a good employee, like, hey, something good's gonna come out of your evaluation, as opposed to just doing them every year and nobody really
cares or gets anything.
Yes,
from it.
yes.
Yeah.
Like that's how my other jobs, like how raises were based on your evaluation. If you're, it's hard to be recognized for your good work that you've done, how many extra hours, like when you actually do an evaluation and then there's some sort of like compensation, like, hey, I was a really good employee. I just got like 25 cents, or an extra 2 days of vacation for the next year.
Would you rather have a plaque or a raise?
I'm thinking like, that's up to the survey. I don't want to answer for everyone. I would probably like take the raise.
I love the idea.
It's a really pretty.
Yeah, like when, you know, like if we want to get people in and then when they're doing a good job, rewarding them and like making it known. Like, you know, we have one, like, what, employee of the year at our Christmas party. And so it's just that one person who gets recognized. I know we have a lot of amazing people in this county that work here, and it'd just be nice to recognize all the hard work that goes in besides the one person. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. But merit pay is really difficult because you
Yeah.
all evaluate.
Well, even if it's like getting that extra, like if we were to go to like an extra vacation day, like how you earn your extra vacation days, if we're gonna accrue.
Well, or you call them personal days and they have no
Yeah,
monetary value as
Yeah.
far as if you leave, you're not getting paid for your 3 personal days, but you've earned these because you did such and such.
Yeah.
You're talking about the distinction between sick time and vacation time, you know, as opposed to just paid time off, period, or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, some sort of reward, because we have.
Okay.
Well, and I think that the merit based is sort of built in, right? When, if I remember right, you know, if you're in a certain job classification, there's a range in that, you know, like in the step and grade, and you have a budget. And so you can, a manager or an elected official has discretion within their labor budget for how to use it. Now, when it comes to a benefit like an extra vacation day, that's something that would, which way is what I think you're talking about. That's something that would have to be handled systematically outside of the discretion of the manager. But there's a possibility that some managers, you know, it's a management style thing, right? Some managers might be better at acknowledging their employees with praise or, you know, intangibles or tangibles, right? That we can't necessarily micromanage. Some might be better at that than others, right? I've worked for really great people who found ways to love on their employees that had a lot of value to the employees without it necessarily being an expensive thing. And then I worked for people who just don't even bother. They just don't even have the time. They're just, it's just a machine and it's cranking and you're in it. So you know, some of these things already exist. The question is, are people using them? And some don't, right?
Yeah.
I have one clarification question,
Sure.
if you don't mind. Are you guys thinking as a commission to keep vacation and sick separate and come up with caps? Or are you wanting one PTO balance with a cap? Because those are two different things. So when we go to write policy, I need to know if we're keeping vacation and sick separate or if we're combining the two into one pot of time to take. Because that'll depend on how much we set for caps and all of that.
Yeah. I personally manage a PTO system, but I don't know if that is a useful thing because I don't have 150 employees. So I think that's where most people are going is PTO. But then that makes it kind of difficult to put the cap on it, right? So you have a thought, Sue or Heber, on PTO paid time off versus vacation?
Well, so one is a benefit and the other is, you know, it has to do sort of with the distinction has to do with what accrues and what, you know, or what could be paid out at the end versus what gets surrendered at the end. Like, I don't think you can cash in sick days, you know. So no matter how many sick days you accrue, when you retire or leave the county, unused sick days just are unused sick days. And when you go into a PTO system where a person doesn't have to bring a doctor's note to their boss to prove they were sick or some silliness like that, like, to me, I think it's sort of insulting. But where those two intersect, like, nobody wants to have to, you know, depending on your manager, who wants to deal with that? Like if I have personal time and I have to use it, I don't know, what's the difference between being sick and needing a mental health day? And people do, right? Or is that just for whims? I don't know. I don't think so. So
But it looks like there's a.
paid time off is good.
I think the problem with intercepting the two
Yes.
is that, for me, for I think Bailey, for Amanda coming up, is that you can get sick leave donations when you have to take a chunk of time. And so when you intercept those two and you have a cap, there's going to be more people taking leave without pay, and maybe that's our own problem, but it's really nice having a sick leave donation.
We also have some processes that are specific to the sheriff's office in terms of sick leave, in terms of if you get injured on the job or anything like that, you have to take that sick time. Also intersecting with workman's comp and other compensation.
So I'm actually not concerned about either one of those. Even with the PTO balance, I think we would still keep for donations that you have to be on FMLA, which prevents anything like that. People can use it.
And want to donate their PTO.
But if you keep your caps similar to what would be comparable, I don't think we would run into an issue. Maybe so, I don't know, but.
So for instance, for myself, when I had my second child, I kept all my vacations. So I used all my vacation that I had, my 80 hours. So I used that, used all my sick leave because you have to use all of yours. So you go to a zero balance. And so then Sergeant McKinney actually donated me all of it because he's like, I have all of this time, so I'm going to give it to you. And he donated like 300 hours just to me. And he was able to do that because he had like 900 hours on the books. And so I know Amanda's going to be in a similar boat when she's due. So I think it's different because like we have a lot of people in the sheriff's office with, and probably Jackie as well, that have a lot of sick leave right now that are maxed out, and they're the ones that donate to all the pregnant people or people who get hurt or anything like that. They're the ones that are donating so that people aren't taking leave without pay because FMLA, we don't have paternity leave or maternity leave in the United States really. And just because FMLA keeps your job, you're not getting paid. So you have this new baby and then you're not getting paid anymore either.
And I'm not opposed to keeping them separate. I think if we write the policy the right way, it won't matter whether we do PTO or keeping them separate, but I don't care. That's why I'm asking the question, because that's going to determine how we write the policy and what caps we put in place.
I'm cool with whatever, I just think that the devil's in the details and there's a way to do it either way.
Okay.
And maybe I don't have a preference, right?
Yeah, and I asked the question generally, and I think for the most part, everybody liked keeping the sick and vacation separate with different maxes and accruals. And so we can definitely do that. I just wasn't sure because when you were talking, Pete, I got the impression that you were thinking more of a PTO balance. And so if that was the direction, then that changes the way we write the policy. So I wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah, but I think we got enough to do without doing this. I would love to have this conversation in the next year because I do think that FMLA can be helped out at a county level, maybe by helping people become parents. And maybe there's a way we can think about that. So having a broader conversation, but we do have this money, the COLA adjustments, severance possibility, and then a survey and we have budget has to be done by June 30th. And so I think maybe PTO might be a bit on the outside of figuring all that out.
So keep them separate for now.
Can we keep them separate for now? I don't know. That's my vote.
Yeah. I'm good with that. So.
Okay.
And Christina, when you had that conversation, it was with the department heads. It wasn't with when you had this conversation about keeping it separate. It was elected officials.
Yeah, and it came up more in general conversation later. So I started to ask people at a certain point because I wasn't originally, but those that I talked to seemed in favor of keeping them separate. And it was both. Some elected officials got asked the question. It was like 4 or 5 meetings in that it came out. So
is it fair I'm not sure who would be tasked with this, so just tell me no. I've got next Friday having the COLA numbers. Is that something that could be run by next Friday? Thank you, Amanda. How about severance and that idea? Can that be done by next Friday?
probably. Yeah.
Okay. And then get the survey out and maybe preliminary results the Monday following or next Friday too. I don't know. I just want to think of what your timeline. Sooner is better than way later.
For the survey, I haven't drafted all the questions yet, because I was waiting for today's discussion. I don't think it'll take super long to finish that, but I don't know that the survey will go out today, probably on Monday. And then if we give a week.
Okay. So the following Monday, so that'd be the 18th, so that'd be the 25th. Okay, so I have COLA by next Friday, severance by next Friday, which is the 22nd, and then preliminary survey results by the Monday. And if you guys could do what you helped me do, thank you very much, by the way, to do the survey with the UW Hobbs School. You could help push that information out and get your folks to fill it out. More information is better information. So, yeah, go ahead, Bailey.
Can I request, I guess, I mean, it looks like we're giving, or you're giving Christina and Amanda a week to get things together,
Yep.
which is great. I do have a deadline of our EMA application due on May 6th. So unfortunately, that's one grant that does not allow me to move money in and out of salary or benefits after they've already awarded it. So some of these applications, I have to know the exact numbers here quickly, unfortunately. And there are other grants that, yeah, no problem, you can move in and out, but EMA unfortunately is one, they don't let me move.
Well, isn't it interesting? Because some of these things, some of these positions are soft money and some of them are general fund money. And it's hard for us as commissioners to treat them all the same, right? So there was a time during budget cuts when the soft money people didn't have to take the same kind of cuts as the people by the general fund because they were funded a different way, right? And then maybe there has to be a delay there, to your point. If we make some changes, it might take a whole year for the change to feed back through because you can't not submit the application. I mean, I just don't know that we can deal with all those eventualities. We have to fix as many things as we can, the best we can.
So you're just concerned about the COLA? Is that how I'm understanding it?
I mean, well, I know you're still working on the EMA numbers, correct?
I'll have them today.
Yeah, so I mean, if that's the direction you guys are really looking at moving forward is the COLA and moving everybody to market value, I have to make sure I have both those numbers in my application for the grant to fund it. Granted, EMA is a 50-50 grant, so you guys have to cover the other 50%. But if I don't get it in and you guys still move forward with this, that's gonna be your decision to either wait until the whole next application, or you guys can then fund it out of your own budget until the next application.
Yeah, so
and each grant is completely different. So, I mean, for me, the sooner the better for all my grant applications. Granted, I've already, I don't know, submitted crime victim witness, drug court, or the state drug court. I've already submitted some, but I still have some more that have salaries attached with them. There's about 20 grant funded positions in the county. And each one needs to be treated differently, unfortunately.
And the conversation that I had with Bailey to make sure that we're not supplanting to where the grant couldn't request the increase would mean that for each of the grant funded positions, depending upon what decisions the commissioners made, you would have to fund like the grants that renew on September 30th. The budget could only be from July 1 to September 30th. Because if it extends beyond that grant year, Bailey has trouble. So then you'd have to make another decision, like we're gonna fund this period of time, but what if the grant doesn't grant those raises? Are we gonna make a budget adjustment to cover the rest of it? Or are we gonna say for these soft funded grant positions, you know, you got this raise for this period of time and we're gonna tell you it's only for this period of time, but you're facing it not coming out. And then with the regard to the hiring part of that, the other consideration that Bailey and I and Christina talked about was if you have that distinction between grant funded positions that get raises or when there were the cuts that didn't take cuts, and then other county jobs where we have trouble hiring, if the grant positions aren't getting the COLA increases and all of those things, they may become harder to hire as well.
Right. So so it looks like Christina will have the EMA stuff to you. My guess is can we turn money back?
You can always turn money back. So, I mean, a lot of times I can do a budget change within a grant cycle. That's not a problem. But but EMA doesn't allow me to do it. Once it's set in the salary or benefit line item, they don't let me move that money in and out like some other plans do.
Okay.
That's why, and then unfortunately, this is the one I'm dealing with, and it's not state drug court at the time, because that's easy, whatever, I'll put, the higher end and we move it around. But yeah, I mean, that's just the downfall of this specific grant that I have the next deadline on. So,
Yeah, my guess would be just put a 1% COLA in there, and then if we end up going higher than that, we'll just.
and then up to the
few
market
hundred
value
bucks.
too?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's what I'll put in there, thanks.
Pete, I've got a question.
Sure.
When you want Amanda to calculate the cost of living, is it based on the new number that Christina will give us? Are we using these numbers within the budget to include that COLA, or are we using existing numbers? Because that'll make a difference.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say existing numbers, because this is gonna be a raise of, because then it would be 1% on maybe $10,000, so that's another, $100 or whatever. So yeah, let's use the existing numbers, because these haven't been approved yet.
No, right,
Yeah, so we can't use those.
Okay,
Do
thank
you
you.
think you guys agree with that?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And are you wanting the bare minimum numbers for each of the departments of what they can employ in order to be able to function, so that we know exactly how much?
Right. Yeah, 'cause you guys,
We used our, when we did it last year, we used our COLA numbers on future numbers that we thought we were asking to get approved, because your COLA raise isn't gonna come in as soon as this budget is approved. It comes in the next year. And so you actually have two processes. Not only are you approving those COLA raises, but you also have to set that money aside so that you can have it for that next budget cycle. So I would say, if you're looking at COLA raises, look at what your COLA raises would be for your proposed new salary, because you're not gonna get, like I said, you're not gonna actually pay that out July 1st of this year. The plan is to pay that out July 1st of 2024. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
don't you pay it monthly over starting July 1, August 1, September 1, will we have that COLA increase in there?
Technically, no, we pay it at least in our office, we pay it yearly
Well, because someone gets a COLA raise on their
on
anniversary.
their anniversary.
Okay, so you did, okay.
Is how we did it. And so on your anniversary date, we say, hey, here's your new raise in pay. So technically, yes, you get it monthly because you're getting a monthly check. But like I said, nobody got it day one when you guys approved our raises. Everybody else got it 1 year after the raise was approved.
We were somewhere in there, like 50% of it happened in the next fiscal year, and the other 50%, you're basically 6 months out of phase on the average, if you look at it that way.
For the most part.
But you're
Yeah.
the only office that operates that in that way. When we've done cost of living increases before, and once it's approved with budget, they start July 1 and they refigure whatever that percentage is, and then it gets distributed throughout that year. And so that's what, for us, I say us like you guys are separate, but for the county, we've always done it starting July 1, which is why we give you the figures ahead of time saying this is what the increase will be. And then it gets distributed, and then next year we'll prepare for whatever the increase is going to be.
It's interesting.
Well, so the way, it's up to you guys on how you do it. The way we do it is, the way you do it is, if anybody starts and they're on whatever type of probationary period they are over the summer, then it's almost 1.5 years before they get their raise.
At the sheriff's
People
office.
are getting raises. We have people that aren't getting raises every year, so.
Right.
Haven't,
If you're
yeah.
talking apples and oranges.
Haven't
Well,
gotten
well,
raises
and
for a very long
So
time.
I'm actually
Yeah.
talking about the future. If this gets approved, like I said, and you go on whatever the anniversary date is, and with any, you don't have to worry about any problems of people coming and going and then not being eligible because they fall in between a budget approval cycle.
Well, so it's for the cost of living for the county, it's not whether or not you're eligible. If they give it to everybody. And so we do July 1.
But I think Aaron's asking, like, if someone comes in July 5, do they get that, like, the raise, or sorry, the base salary plus that COLA raise?
I see what you're saying.
Whatever your starting wages.
So you don't get but that's what he's saying, is that's why we had done it.
Based on the anniversary.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is anybody that was
Well, I know
hired
it's-
after, thank you, Rebecca. So what you're saying is anybody that was hired after July 1, in theory, doesn't get the cost of living because we give it out countywide. So you do it then on your anniversary date so that they get the cost of living up through the next cycle.
Well, even if you're within your first.
Right, but
days.
they get it within, right.
So that's really anything between May 1 and September 1.
The only way to deal with that would be to marry the cost of living to the
starting wage.
salary.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because like Christina said, if you're having your starting salary here and then that doesn't change in 5 years, we're way behind. But if you're putting that cost of living with your starting wage, then it's growing with the cost of living.
So that's how we got $285,000
Right.
behind.
Yeah.
Because we haven't visited the subject for a few years.
Yeah, this is why I hate two salary schedules. I gotta tell you.
It's hard.
This is one of the reasons that I've asked this work to be done, because it's crazy to operate, in my opinion, to operate two
And
different
as
ways.
complicated as it sounds, when you're kind of taking a look at it, when you actually put it on there and you start to do those numbers, it's a high initial cost your first year across the board. But years 2, 3 and on, you're gonna have so many people coming and going and moving and going, things to where, like I said, you'll have a nice steady baseline of what that is. We're already able to show basically what our COLA raises are for the next 9 years. You know, that we're not gonna top, you know, each year when we ask, we're really not gonna top more than 48,000 a year. And we're only gonna get there is if everybody I hired this year stays, you know, through all of those COLA raises, all those years. And I want to say that I'm amazing and that's going to happen, but we know that the reality is.
How many employees do you have?
Other things. I have 46. Well, I have about 52 employees.
Oh, so the issue is that you can't ever maintain full staffing, right? So you budget for full staffing.
It's not even full staffing. You're not going to maintain all of your staffing at the highest level.
No, I just mean you maintain your full staffing. Like if you have 54 positions and there's always going to be 1 or 2 or whatever open.
Right.
So you have a labor budget that you're always returning some money back because you just, so that the way that you would want to save money is by having actually less turnover because training costs are, that's expensive and you don't bring any value to bear on the street or in the.
It'll even out. You'll have a 6-year employee leave, but then you replace it with a 1-year employee.
Right.
That 6-year employee, their 1% is higher than your 1-year employee. So like I said, it'll even out. And it gets to be very, very predictable.
I love the process to be the same. I gotta tell you.
The process is not the same.
Yeah.
You gotta do a lot of
The
work on the
process needs to be the
front
same,
end,
I gotta tell you.
once it's done.
Because it's really
Well, in law
hard.
enforcement's, it's its own animal in a certain sort of way.
Anything that we can do to make it, like I said, we've done that work on the front end
Because
to
of
make
rank.
it as predictable as possible.
Yeah.
It makes it a lot easier for us.
And did you have thoughts on this, since you're probably the one that's in the trenches the most on this stuff and it impacts your life differently?
Got my salary spreadsheet all ready to update and roll, so
Okay,
you want to calculate whatever you want me to calculate.
yeah, but 2 different ways of calculating COLA, does that cause you a bit
No.
of?
It's just like a different thought, like, to me, he's calling them COLA raises, but they're more, he's doing a yearly, like, when someone's hired, at a year, you get a raise, the next year, you
Yeah,
get a
you can
raise.
call it on.
Yeah, his is yearly
Raise too.
raises, whereas in my opinion, a COLA is where the whole organization does a percentage bump for everybody.
The tide rises.
Yeah.
Devaluation of money over time, right? Yeah, just to replace that piece.
So is the 1% COLA adjustment countywide in addition to his longevity? Because and that's
the discussion, yeah.
Yeah.
For us, we would already be built into that. We've already built that into the system, so it wouldn't necessarily be on top of.
Yeah.
Yeah, are you saying you might be the only one doing it and the rest of us are behind you?
Yes.
Well, I think they figured it out into their step raises. and
Sure.
This
Yeah.
hasn't been done
No.
here, and so.
So to be
Yeah.
clear, then the amount that Amanda's gonna figure will not include your office? at the 1%?
Well, so
I
we,
saw
and we
you
can talk
did
about that
there.
a little bit later.
Okay.
Some of the things that you requested for my office in terms of getting people or some of my middle managed people as well. But in terms of where we are and on your numbers too, where we are on our lower end with our patrol deputies, we're right where we needed to be.
Right.
So we're a little bit ahead of the curve. We're not looking at raises essentially for people to bring them up to market. We already did that last year. So it's just the 1%, which we were gonna ask for. We have a few other upper administration that we left behind last year that we were going to address this year. So there's cost issues with that.
And so I think a COLA sometimes isn't applied, right? And sometimes it's applied by so many like Social Security and those Medicare is the CPI. So consumer price index is tied to that. So if it's higher, it goes up higher. If it's lower, it goes lower. And for a long time, it's been really nothing. So your steps are always insured. A COLA may or may not be insured, right? And so that in my mind is a different.
We just use different wording, but yeah, you can call it a step raise, call it longevity raise, whatever it is that you want. But either way, we kept it to where we know exactly what it's gonna be.
Yeah.
And we map it out for each deputy. We can sit a deputy down day one and be like, this is how much you're gonna make for the next 20 years.
Okay, and so I just want to make sure I'm right in my mind here. The COLA would not impact you guys. It would be the rest of the county.
Well, it's a little bit depends. If you guys get weird and do like 3.5% type of stuff, then we will adjust our numbers. But based on what we've seen in terms of your entire budget, the money that you're gonna come in and the money that you spend, I'm not really worried that you guys are gonna do that high. I trust you to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
I know that right off the bat. Yeah, it's not a ton.
Can you imagine them trying to deal with that? You know, you can't, it's not possible.
Right. They got the other problem. Nobody can live there.
We do have a salary reserve account that, you know, we put money into every year. And so to me, in a certain way, we have a set aside for this, whether it's cost of living or, you know, the normal progression that people make in their professional lives. That could be drawn on. Now, the question, I guess, is can we keep up making the contributions, you know, to that? Or do we tip the balance at some point and, you know, looking ahead 2 years, we realize, you know what I'm saying?
Yep,
So
totally, yeah. And I think we had said we had put in, let's say we had $400,000 to spend, we would spend $200,000 previous couple of years on salary raises, put 200,000 into the reserve account. If I, you know, so I have a 50-50 type thing. Now I can't remember what the number is in there. I want to say it's 400, around $400,000.
but once you make a commitment to pay someone more and give cost of living increases, that there's an actuarial aspect to that. It's not just a promise for the next year, because you're going to cut everybody's pay the next year. That's an ongoing and compounding promise.
That's why the percentage
And
has
so,
usually stay low.
yeah.
Okay, anything else before we let you go into your afternoon? I know we've beaten this one up pretty good, but really I do appreciate it because I think this is a place where hopefully we can get people to stay, be a little bit happier, and to do something that are reasonable that doesn't affect what we do at the courthouse, but does affect people's lives in a positive way. So thank you guys for being willing to add to your work. And then that survey, it'd be great to hear what folks really think, and then we can have some idea of what we can do come budget time. And, you know, a lot of these things are unknown. We don't know what it's going to be. We can guess what it's going to be, but we don't know, and won't know. So that's that. Anything else, Sue?
No.
Bieber? Anything?
Oh, on the WCCA call the other day, we were sort of recapping what happened in the budget, the legislative budget and things that affect counties. And one of them was increase to the line item that the state uses to reimburse the county attorneys, because the positions are paid some percentage by the general fund and reimbursed at some percentage by so it means that the state expects to match their portion of salary increases that we would give to attorneys. And there's actually, the devil's in the details, but I actually think that there might be more help there than just the match. It's something that we need to research. Sort of the mechanisms of the current legislation is it.
There's a statute on county attorney reimbursement from the state.
But I don't know if they were going above and beyond that on a separate program, or if it was just more added to that program. So that's something that needs to be researched. Also, counties are having a hard time getting good attorneys to apply to be, to want to be candidates, to take a pay cut of 50% or 70% to serve their community or whatever. So they did increase public official, it doesn't mean because we're the ones who decide what the elected officials are going to get paid, but they gave commissioners more room to do that.
Yeah.
Just for attorney.
No, actually for everyone. Maybe, but not ourselves, maybe. I don't know. There's some ratio thing that happens in there. No. Yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of interesting. And there were lots of grant things. Lots.
More.
That have a lot of value. And it's lots.
I spam Bailey and Brady a couple times a day.
Oh, yeah.
Tired of me.
We're looking at it all. I got 20 deadlines.
I do the
next
same
week.
thing, send it on Facebook, and he started just saying, I'm on it.
Well, thank you, guys. I appreciate it. If you have anything, please let us know. And thanks for getting your budgets underway, and we'll see what the world brings to us. But know that we do value your services and really do appreciate it. And if there's ways that we can make life better here at the courthouse, always send them our way. It's really important for me to personally have a happy workforce and one that's flexible, right? There's no reason to show up. So, all right. Have a nice afternoon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey, Jim.
You want?
Yeah.